Hey dear listeners, welcome to tonight's journey into the unknown depths of our planet's most mysterious realm. Tonight, we're diving deep into the darkest, most terrifying secrets that our oceans hold, from ancient predators that shouldn't exist, to ghostly ships that vanish without explanation, from underwater cities lost to time to sounds so haunting they've kept scientists awake for nights on end. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet, yet we've explored less than 5% of it. That means there's a whole world down there waiting in the darkness, filled with mysteries that would make your worst nightmares seem like pleasant bedtime stories. Before we descend into these watery depths together, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy diving into the unknown with me. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's brave enough to join us on these midnight journeys into the abyss. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a warm blanket, and let's ease into tonight's exploration of the ocean's darkest secrets. When you think of the ocean, you might picture sunny beaches, gentle waves, and maybe a dolphin or two jumping playfully in the distance. But tonight, we're going somewhere else entirely. We're going to the places where light has never touched, where pressure would crush you in milliseconds, and where things live that evolution seems to have forgotten about. The ocean isn't just water, it's a three-dimensional alien world that exists right here on our planet, filled with creatures so bizarre they look like they were designed by someone having a particularly unsettling nightmare. It's a realm where fish have their own built-in flashlights, where giant squids battle sperm whales in epic underwater wars, and where the very geography itself seems to shift and change like a living thing. Picture this. You're floating on the surface of the ocean on a calm night. The water is like black glass, reflecting stars you can barely make out. But beneath you, stretching down for miles and miles, is an abyss so deep that if you drop Mount Everest into some parts of it, the peak wouldn't even come close to reaching the surface. And in that darkness, things are moving, things are hunting, things are waiting. The ocean doesn't care about your fears or your comfort zone. It operates by rules so alien to our land-dwelling minds that even our most advanced science struggles to understand them. Down there in the deepest trenches, the pressure is over 1,000 times greater than what you experience sitting in your room right now. It would be like having the weight of 50 jumbo jets pressing down on every square inch of your body. And yet, life thrives there. Not just survives, thrives. Creatures that have never seen sunlight, that have never felt warmth, that exists in a world of eternal midnight and crushing cold. They've adapted to conditions so extreme that they might as well be living on another planet entirely. Some of them glow with their own eerie light, creating constellations of bioluminescence in the absolute darkness. Others have evolved to be transparent like living ghosts drifting through the water. But here's what really keeps oceanographers up at night. We keep finding new things down there. New species, new ecosystems, new mysteries that challenge everything we thought we knew about life on Earth. Every deep-sea expedition brings back footage of creatures that look like they crawled out of someone's fever dream. And for every new discovery, 10 more questions arise. The ocean has been keeping secrets for billions of years, and it's not about to give them up easily. It guards its mysteries jealously, hidden beneath miles of dark water and crushing pressure. But tonight we're going to dive down into that alien world and explore some of the most spine-tingling, sleep-disrupting, absolutely fascinating mysteries that lurk in the depths. Because if you think you know what's scary, wait until you hear about what's been living in the deepest parts of our planet's oceans, right beneath our feet all this time. And the really unsettling part, we're just beginning to scratch the surface. Let's start our journey in a place that sounds like it came straight out of a horror movie, the Mariana Trench. Located in the western Pacific Ocean, this underwater canyon is the deepest known part of Earth's oceans, plunging down over 36,000 ft below sea level. To put that in perspective, if you could somehow drain all the water out of the Mariana Trench and drop Mount Everest into it, the mountain's peak would still be over a mile underwater. The Mariana Trench isn't just deep, it's alien. The pressure down there is so intense that it would instantly crush any human body into something resembling chunky soup. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and there's no sunlight, no warmth, no comfort of any kind. It's as close to visiting another planet as you can get without leaving Earth. And yet, even in this hellish environment, life finds a way. In 2016, scientists discovered a ghostly white fish swimming at depths of 26,000 ft. They named it the Mariana snailfish, and it lives deeper than any other fish known to science. Its body has evolved to withstand pressures that would instantly kill any surface creature. Its bones are flexible, its cells packed with special proteins that prevent them from being crushed. But here's the truly unsettling part. Every time we send cameras down into the trench, we find something new, something that shouldn't exist. And we can't help but wonder what else is down there watching our cameras, hiding just beyond the reach of our lights. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron became one of the very few humans to ever visit the bottom of the Mariana Trench. He described it as a barren, desolate place, but even he was only there for a few hours. What would happen if someone stayed longer? What would they see emerge from the darkness when all was quiet and still? The natives of the nearby Mariana Islands have legends of creatures that live in the deep, ancient beings that sometimes come to the surface when the moon is right. These aren't just stories to them, they're warnings. Moving away from the Mariana Trench, let's drift over to another oceanic mystery that has puzzled scientists for decades. The phenomenon known as the Bermuda Triangle. Located between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, this vast stretch of ocean has allegedly claimed countless ships and aircraft. The Bermuda Triangle has been nicknamed the Devil's Triangle for good reason. Since the mid-9th century, dozens of bad ships and airplanes have disappeared within its boundaries, often without a trace, often in calm weather, often without so much as a distress call. In 1945, 5 U.S. Navy bombers known as Flight 19 vanished during a routine training mission over the triangle. The 14 men aboard were never found, and neither were the 13 crew members of the search plane sent to look for them. All disappeared into thin air, or perhaps more accurately, into the dark waters below. What could cause such disappearances? Some theories suggest powerful magnetic anomalies that disrupt compasses and other navigation equipment. Others propose sudden and violent methane gas eruptions from the ocean floor, creating areas of water that can't support the buoyancy of ships. And of course, there are those who believe something more supernatural is at work. Underwater portals, alien abductions, or even the remnants of advanced technology from the lost civilization of Atlantis. But perhaps the most disturbing explanation is also the simplest. The ocean is vast, deep, and mostly empty. If something pulls you down into its depths, there may be no one around to hear your cries for help. You could vanish, and no one would ever know what happened to you. Speaking of vanishing, have you ever heard of ghost ships? These are vessels found adrift at sea, with their crew mysteriously missing. The most famous of these is perhaps the Mary Celeste, discovered sailing off the Azores in 1872 with no one aboard. The ship was in perfect condition with plenty of food and water. The crew's belongings were still in their cabins. The only lifeboat was missing, but there had been no storm, no sign of pirates, no reason for the crew to abandon ship. It was as if they had all simultaneously decided to step off the edge of the world. More recently, in 2006, the tanker Jiansang was found drifting off the coast of Australia. No crew, no identifying documents, nothing to explain where it had come from or where everyone had gone. In 2013, the yacht Cass 2 was discovered off the coast of Australia with its engine running, food on the table, and no sign of its three-man crew. These ghost ships aren't ancient history or maritime legends. They're happening now in our modern world of GPS and satellite phones. Something is still taking people from their vessels, leaving behind only empty ships to drift as warnings. Now, let's dive a bit deeper and talk about something that's been heard in the ocean's depths, something that has no easy explanation. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration detected an ultra-low frequency sound in the Pacific Ocean. They called it the bloop. It was one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded, and it was heard by hydrophones over 3,000 meters apart. The bloop didn't sound like typical geological noises such as volcanic activity or earthquakes. Instead, it resembled the sound an enormous animal might make, but it was far too loud to be from any known creature. For scale, it would need to be something several times larger than the blue whale, the largest animal known to have ever existed on Earth. Scientists eventually attributed the bloop to ice calving in Antarctica, but not everyone is convinced. After all, ice doesn't usually make sounds that mimic biological patterns. And the bloop isn't alone. There's also Julia, a sound recorded in 1999 that lasted for about 15 seconds and has never been explained. There's Slowdown, a continuous sound that decreased in frequency over the course of 7 minutes. There's Upsweep, first detected in 1991 and still heard seasonally to this day. And perhaps most disturbing of all, there's the Whistle, a high-pitched sound that seems to follow certain ships and then disappear when investigated. Some deep-sea fishermen refuse to discuss the whistle, believing that acknowledging it brings bad luck. They say it's the sound of something hunting, something ancient, something that considers the ocean its territory and humans as intruders. But let's move on to something perhaps even more unsettling. The creatures that actually live in these depths, the ones we've managed to capture on camera or bring to the surface. The giant squid was long thought to be a sailor's myth, a monster, invented to explain ships lost at sea. Then, in 2004, Japanese scientists captured the first images of a live giant squid in its natural habitat. These creatures can grow up to 43 feet long, with eyes the size of dinner plates and tentacles lined with razor-sharp, teeth-like structures. They lurk in the darkness between 1,000 and 3,000 IFT below the surface. Their massive bodies propelled by muscular fins, their movements silent and purposeful. Even more recently discovered is the colossal squid, which is shorter than the giant squid but much heavier. Its tentacles are lined not just with teeth, but with swiving hooks that can rotate 360 degrees to latch on to prey. Once these hooks sink in, there's no escape. The colossal squid's beak is powerful enough to slice through flesh and bone with ease. Its eyes are not just large, they're the largest in the entire animal kingdom, each one about the size of a soccer ball. And they don't just detect light and movement, they glow in the dark, creating beams of bioluminescence that some scientists believe might hypnotize prey. But squids, however massive, are at least somewhat familiar to us. Other deep-sea creatures are so alien that they defy easy categorization. Consider the bellyfish, also known as the spookfish. This creature has a transparent head filled with fluid through which it can see above itself. Its eyes are actually inside its head, encased in this clear dome, able to rotate to look forward or upward. It's like something out of a science fiction movie, yet it lives just a few thousand feet below the surface. Or what about the goblin shark? A living fossil that has remained virtually unchanged for 125 million years. It has an extendable jaw, that can shoot forward to grab prey like something out of the movie Alien. When not in use, this jaw retracts back into its face, giving it an almost human-like profile. If humans had pale pink skin, dead black eyes, and dozens of needle-like teeth. The goblin shark moves slowly, conserving energy in the cold depths, but when it strikes, its jaw can extend fully in less than 1/10 of a second. That's faster than you can blink. Imagine swimming in dark water and seeing that pale face approaching, not realizing until it's too late that the creature's actual mouth is still hidden, waiting to lunge forward and grab you. Then there's the fang tooth, which has the largest teeth proportional to body size of any fish in the ocean. Its teeth are so large that it has evolved special sockets in its brain to accommodate them when its mouth is closed. Think about that. A creature whose teeth are so massive, so essential to its existence that its brain has to make room for them. Its face is almost entirely mouth, a gaping trap of interlocking fangs designed for one purpose only, to ensure that whatever enters never comes back out. And we can't forget the black swallower, a fish that can eat prey more than twice its own size. Its stomach can expand to such an extent that it sometimes swallows bioluminescent creatures that continue to glow inside it, making the black swallower itself light up from within as it digests its still glowing meal. Sometimes these fish are found dead, floating on the surface, having burst open from the inside because they tried to eat something too large. Even in death, their greed is evident. Their bodies split open with half-digested prey still visible inside them. But perhaps the most unsettling deep-sea creature isn't large or particularly terrifying in appearance. It's the immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dani. This small, transparent jellyfish has the ability to revert back to its juvenile state after reaching maturity, essentially restarting its life cycle. Theoretically, it could do this indefinitely, making it biologically immortal. Think about that. While you and I age and move inevitably toward death, these simple creatures are resetting their biological clocks, living through cycle after cycle, potentially forever. They're watching the rise and fall of species, the slow drift of continents, the entire span of human civilization, all from the timeless depths of the ocean. Now let's talk about something that combines both natural and human elements of oceanic terror, rogue waves. For centuries, sailors reported encountering walls of water, massive waves that appeared out of nowhere, often in otherwise calm seas. These stories were dismissed as tall tales or exaggerations until 1995, when an oil platform in the North Sea recorded a 26 m 85 ft wave, while the surrounding seas had waves of just 10 m 33 ft. This confirmed what mariners had known for centuries. The ocean can suddenly, without warning, produce waves of monstrous size and power. Rogue waves aren't just large, they're anomalies that defy prediction. They can form when multiple wave patterns intersect and combine their energy, or when waves interact with ocean currents flowing in the opposite direction. They've been known to appear even in calm seas, rising up like liquid mountains before crashing down with enough force to break ships in half. Modern cruise ships and cargo vessels are built to withstand much, but a true rogue wave hitting at the wrong angle can still be catastrophic. And here's the truly frightening part. We now believe these waves are much more common than previously thought. They're out there right now, moving across the ocean, and we have no reliable way to predict where or when they'll appear. Related to rogue waves, but even more destructive, are tsunamis, those vast walls of water triggered by undersea earthquakes or landslides. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami killed over 230,000 people across multiple countries. The 2011 Toku tsunami in Japan reached heights of up to 133 feet and penetrated up to 6 miles inland. Both struck with little warning, the ocean suddenly withdrawing from shorelines in an eerie prelude before rushing back with unstoppable force. Tsunamis aren't just big waves, they're displacement events, the entire ocean briefly lifting itself and moving inland. The water keeps coming and coming, not breaking like a normal wave, but pushing forward with the weight of the sea behind it. But natural phenomena are only part of what makes the ocean terrifying. Humans have contributed our own layers of mystery and horror to the seas. Consider the concept of sea burial. For most of maritime history, when sailors died at sea, they were simply wrapped in canvas, weighted down, and dropped overboard. This means that the bottom of commonly traveled sea routes is littered with human remains in various states of decomposition, thousands upon thousands of bodies lying in the darkness, slowly becoming part of the ecosystem. Many deep-sea creatures first encountered human flesh this way, developing a taste for it long before we began exploring their domain in person. Then there are shipwrecks, time capsules of human tragedy, preserved in the ocean's depths. The world's oceans contain an estimated 3 million shipwrecks, most of them never explored, never documented. Each one represents a disaster, a moment when the sea claimed human lives and technology. Some, like the Titanic, are famous, their stories told and retold. Others are anonymous, known only by scattered debris or brief mentions in old maritime records. But all of them rest in the darkness, slowly being reclaimed by the ocean, becoming artificial reefs where life continues in new forms. Some of these wrecks are particularly disturbing. The Wilhelm Gussow, sunk in 1945, took with it over 9,000 lives, the largest loss of life on a single ship in history. The wreck lies in the Baltic Sea, a massive underwater tomb that still contains the remains of most of its passengers and crew. The USS Indianapolis sunk in 1945 after delivering components for the atomic bomb, left its crew adrift and shark-infested waters. Of the 1,095 men aboard, only 316 survived, many of the others taken by sharks in what became the worst shark attack incident in history. Survivors reported that the sharks would come each night, ticking men one by one from the edges of their groups. The splashing and screams would last briefly, then silence, then the waiting would begin again for the next attack. But not all maritime mysteries involve ships that we know sank. In 1968, the submarine USS Scorpion disappeared in the Atlantic with 99 men aboard. Despite being a nuclear submarine with multiple backup systems and emergency protocols, it vanished, without a distress call. When the wreckage was finally located, it was found in pieces scattered across the ocean floor. But what caused it to break apart remains unknown. Some theories suggest an accidental torpedo detonation. Others propose a catastrophic mechanical failure, and some even suggest a collision with a Soviet submarine that was covered up for political reasons. Whatever happened, 99 men died in the crushing darkness, perhaps aware in their final moments that no rescue would be possible at such depths. Let's shift our focus to something that combines natural formation with human mystery: underwater caves. These submerged tunnel systems extend deep into the earth, filled with water so clear it creates the illusion of flying rather than swimming. But this beauty is deceptive. Cave diving is considered the most dangerous form of exploration on Earth, with hundreds of documented deaths. The hazards are numerous: disorientation, equipment failure, stirred up sediment that reduces visibility to zero in seconds, and narrow passages that can trap divers, leaving them to die slowly as their air runs out. Some underwater caves seem to defy explanation. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, the extensive cenote system contains artifacts and human remains that suggest ritualistic use dating back to the ancient Maya. Perfectly preserved skeletons rest on the floors of these caves, some in positions suggesting they were alive when they entered the water. Were they sacrifices? Victims of some ancient crime? Or did they go willingly into these waters, believing they were passages to the underworld? Their bones remain suspended in the perpetual twilight of the cenotes, their empty eye sockets watching as modern divers pass in the Bahamas. The blue holes, vertical underwater caves that can reach depths of over 600 FFT, contain something even more puzzling. In several of these holes, archaeologists have discovered human remains alongside the bones of now extinct animals, suggesting these people died thousands of years ago when sea levels were much lower and these caves were dry. But some of the remains show evidence of arrangement, of purpose. Skulls placed in circles, long bones laid out in patterns that couldn't have occurred naturally. Someone or something moved these bones after death, creating formations with them deep in what would eventually become the ocean floor. Perhaps the most famous underwater cave mystery comes from Florida's Eagle Nest Sink, known to divers as the Grand Canyon of cave diving. In the 1990s, several experienced divers reported seeing the same inexplicable sight. A humanoid figure, pale and emaciated, moving through the dark passages without diving equipment. The figure would approach seemingly curious, then vanish into crevices too small for a human to enter. After multiple sightings by different divers, the local diving community began to call this entity the Keeper. Some believe it's a collective hallucination caused by nitrogen narcosis, the disorienting effect of breathing compressed air at depth. Others think it might be some unknown creature adapted to life in these underwater labyrinths. But a few of the oldest cave divers refuse to discuss it at all, and they never dive Eagle Nest alone. The ocean's mysteries aren't limited to its depths. Even surface phenomena can be deeply unsettling. Consider the case of red tides when the ocean suddenly turns the color of blood due to algal blooms. These events can be triggered by pollution, climate change, or natural cycles, but the effect is the same. Vast stretches of coastline transformed into what looks like a biblical plague. The water becomes toxic, killing fish by the millions, which then wash ashore to rot under the sun. The stench can be detected miles inland, and the toxins can become aerosolized, carried by the wind to cause respiratory problems in humans. In 2018, a particularly severe red tide hit Florida's coast, killing over 2,000 tons of marine life. Beaches were covered with dead fish, dolphins, turtles, and manatees, their bodies decomposing in the heat. Local residents reported waking to find their coastal communities transformed overnight into scenes of apocalyptic devastation. Some describe the sensation as the ocean itself turning against us, as if the sea had decided to expel its inhabitants in some massive act of rejection. And while scientists understand the mechanisms behind red tides, they still struggle to predict when and where they'll occur or how severe they'll be. The ocean, even at its most toxic, keeps its own counsel. Then there are the vast garbage patches that now float in our oceans. Collections of plastic waste brought together by circular ocean currents called geoids. The largest, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, is estimated to cover 1.6 million kilometers, an area twice the size of Texas. But Garbage Patch is somewhat misleading. These aren't solid islands of trash, but rather areas where plastic particles are highly concentrated, turning the water into a kind of soup. The plastic breaks down not into biodegradable components, but into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually becoming microplastics that enter the food chain. Scientists studying these garbage patches have made disturbing discoveries. New ecosystems are forming on this floating plastic, with microorganisms adapting to consume and live on the synthetic materials. These organisms don't exist anywhere else on Earth. They're entirely new species evolved to thrive in our pollution. Some researchers have dubbed this emerging ecosystem the plastosphere, and they worry about what it might mean for the future of our oceans. Are we witnessing evolution in real time, the development of life forms that could potentially outcompete natural ocean dwellers? Or are these new microbes actually helping to break down our waste, providing an unexpected solution to our pollution? Either way, we've created something unprecedented in Earth's history, an ecosystem built on our discarded waste floating in the middle of the ocean, evolving according to its own rules. But let's return to the depths, to the darkness, where the ocean keeps its oldest secrets. In recent years, scientists have discovered what they call whale falls, the final resting places of these massive marine mammals after death. When a whale dies at sea, its body eventually sinks to the ocean floor, where it creates a unique ecosystem that can last for decades. The descent itself is eerily beautiful, a massive shadow drifting down through the water column, occasionally spinning or turning as ocean currents catch it. But it's what happens after the whale reaches the bottom that's truly fascinating. First comes what scientists call the mobile scavenger phase, when sharks, hagfish, and other large scavengers strip the flesh from the whale's body. This can take months or even years for a large whale. Then begins the enrichment opportune stage, when smaller creatures consume the remaining soft tissues. Finally, there's the sulfophilic stage, which can last for decades as bacteria break down. The whale's bones releasing sulfur compounds that support entire communities of specialized organisms. These creatures exist nowhere else on Earth except on the remains of dead whales. They live their entire lives, generation after generation, on these islands of death in the deep sea. What's particularly unsettling about whale falls is that they create life from death in the most literal sense. The decay of the whale's body provides nourishment for up to 3 generations of organisms that wouldn't exist without this massive input of organic material. In a very real way, the whale continues to live long after its actual death, its body becoming a neighborhood, an ecosystem, a world unto itself. And these sulfophilic communities share remarkable similarities with the life forms found around hydrothermal vents, suggesting that whale falls may have served as stepping stones for life to spread across the abyssal plain. Areas of the ocean that would otherwise be too nutrient poor to support such diversity. Speaking of hydrothermal vents, these underwater geysers represent another ocean mystery that challenges our understanding of life itself. Discovered only in 1977, these vents spew water heated to over 1,000 degrees F, loaded with toxic minerals, and completely devoid of sunlight. By all conventional wisdom, they should be dead zones, areas where life couldn't possibly exist. Instead, they host some of the most densely populated ecosystems on Earth. Giant tube worms over 6 feet tall with no mouths or digestive systems thrive near these vents by hosting symbiotic bacteria that convert the vent's chemicals into energy. Blind shrimp with light-sensing organs on their backs detect the faint glow of the superheated water. Ghostly white crabs scuttle among bacterial mats so thick they look like snow covering the ocean floor. This entire ecosystem exists completely independent of the sun, challenging the fundamental assumption that sunlight is necessary for life on Earth. And here's where it gets truly mind-bending. Some scientists believe that life on Earth may have originated at these hydrothermal vents in the dark, toxic conditions of the deep ocean. We surface dwellers, with our dependence on sunlight and oxygen, might actually be the evolutionary offshoots, the weird cousins who left the ancestral home to colonize the strange world above. If true, it means we're all descendants of the deep of organisms that evolved in conditions we now find alien and hostile. The darkness of the ocean depths isn't just another environment. It might be our original home, the birthplace of all terrestrial life. This theory gains additional support from the recent discovery of even more extreme environments in the ocean, places where life exists against all odds. Take the Mediterranean salt flats, underwater pools of brine so dense and toxic that they kill any fish that swims into them. These lakes within the sea have distinct shorelines and even waves, as the ultra-dense salt water moves differently than the regular seawater above it. And yet even here, specialized microorganisms thrive, having evolved to withstand salt concentrations that would preserve meat. Or consider the hot springs of the Arctic Ocean, where water heated by geothermal activity creates oases of warmth in the otherwise freezing deep. These springs support communities of creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Species that have likely been isolated for millions of years, evolving along their own unique paths. Some of these organisms possess biochemical adaptations so unusual that they're being studied for potential medical applications. The blood of icefish, for instance, contains natural antifreeze compounds that could revolutionize organ transplantation by allowing organs to be preserved longer. But the ocean's biological mysteries pale in comparison to some of its geological enigmas. Consider the case of the Baltic Sea anomaly discovered in 2011 by the Swedish diving team Ocean X. Sonar images revealed an object on the seafloor that appeared remarkably similar to the fictional spacecraft Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. A circular formation with straight lines, right angles, and what looked like an entrance ramp. When divers attempted to approach the anomaly, they reported that their electrical equipment mysteriously failed, only to start working again when they moved away from the object. Professional geologists have suggested the formation is natural, possibly a glacial deposit, but its symmetrical appearance and the electronic disturbances have fueled speculation about everything from a crash UFO to a Nazi anti-submarine device to an ancient temple from a forgotten civilization. Ocean X team member Stefan Hogorn stated, "I have been diving for 20 years and explored many shipwrecks, but I have never seen anything like this." Despite multiple expeditions, the Baltic Sea anomaly remains largely unexplored and unexplained, sitting in the darkness 300 ft below the high surface. Even more mysterious are the underwater structures found near Yonauni Island, Japan. Discovered in 1987, these massive stone formations include straight walls, steps, columns, and what appears to be a human face carved into the rock. Some archaeologists, like Graham Hancock, believe these are the remains of a Japanese Atlantis, a civilization lost to rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, approximately 10,000 years ago. Others maintain their natural formations shaped by the ocean's currents and the region's distinctive geology. The Japanese government has taken no official position on the Yonauni monument, neither confirming it as an archaeological site nor dismissing the possibility. Local fishermen, however, have their own theories. They say the structures were always known to them, passed down in folklore as the home of the sea gods, places where offerings were once made to ensure safe passage and bountiful catches. Some claim that on perfectly clear days when the water is still, you can hear a low humming coming from the monument, a sound like distant chanting that seems to originate from within the stone itself. Another underwater mystery that defies easy explanation is the Cuban underwater city detected by sonar in 2001 off the coast of Cuba. The sonar images show what appear to be geometric structures, pyramids, circular buildings, and roads at a depth of over 2,000 ft. If these structures are artificial, they would have had to be built when the area was above sea level, which would date them to at least 50,000 years ago, long before any known advanced civilization. Due to the extreme depth and the political complications of working in Cuban waters, very little direct observation has been done, leaving the true nature of these formations open to speculation. Paulina Zalitsky, the marine engineer who discovered the site, has been cautious in her statements, saying only that it's a really wonderful structure which really looks like it could have been a large urban center. But others have gone further, suggesting connections to Atlantis, to pre-Columbian American civilizations, or even to extraterrestrial visitors. Without more research, the Cuban underwater city remains one of the ocean's most tantalizing mysteries, potential evidence of a human history far different from what our textbooks teach. The ocean doesn't just hide potential ancient structures, it also conceals evidence of more recent human activities. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union lost nuclear weapons and maritime accidents, some of which have never been recovered. These broken arrows, as they're called in military terminology, lie somewhere on the ocean floor, their exact locations in some cases unknown even to the governments that lost them. The USS Scorpion, which we mentioned earlier, was carrying 2 nuclear torpedoes when it sank weapons that remain with the wreckage to this day. In 1968, a Soviet submarine K-129 sank in the Pacific, taking with it nuclear missiles and the lives of all 98 crew members. The incident was so significant that the CIA mounted a secret operation called Project Aorian to recover the submarine and its nuclear secrets. Using a specially designed ship called the Glower Explorer, they attempted to lift the submarine from a depth of 3 miles. The operation was only partially successful, with just a portion of the submarine recovered. The rest, including some of its nuclear material, remains on the ocean floor over 3 km down in the darkness. More disturbing still are the deliberate dumping operations carried out by various nations throughout the 20th century. Until the practice was banned in 1993, countries including the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, and Japan routinely disposed of radioactive waste, chemical, weapons, and conventional munitions by simply dropping them into the ocean. The exact locations of many of these dumping grounds are poorly documented, and the containers are now corroding in the salt water, potentially leaking their toxic contents into the marine environment. In the Irish Sea, barrels of radioactive waste dumped in the 1950s and 1960s are now showing signs of failure, releasing their contents into waters that support commercial fisheries. In the Baltic Sea, an estimated 50,000 tons of chemical weapons lie on the seafloor, including mustard gas and sarin. Occasionally, Baltic fishermen pull up these munitions in their nets, suffering chemical burns or worse. The weapons, now unstable, after decades underwater, are too dangerous to recover en masse. So they remain where they are, slowly degrading, slowly releasing their poisons. But human contaminants aren't limited to weapons and waste. The ocean also holds countless human remains, and not just from shipwrecks and sea burials. Throughout history, the sea has been used as a convenient disposal site for the victims of crime, warfare, and political violence. During Argentina's dirty war in the 1970s, the military junta conducted death flights in which political prisoners were drugged, loaded onto aircraft, and thrown alive into the Atlantic Ocean. Similar practices occurred during the Algerian War and allegedly during conflicts in Chile, Guatemala, and Iraq. The exact number of people disposed of in this way is unknown, but estimates range into the thousands. Their bodies now rest somewhere in the ocean depths, most never to be recovered or identified. The ocean keeps these secrets, these crimes, hidden beneath its surface. The perpetrators relied on the sea's vastness and inaccessibility to conceal their actions, and for the most part, it has obliged them. The ocean is perhaps the world's largest unmarked grave, holding the remains of countless individuals whose stories will never be told. But let's move away from these human horrors and return to the natural mysteries of the deep, specifically to creatures that blur the line between myth and reality. For centuries, sailors told stories of massive sea serpents, enormous tentacle beasts, and other marine monsters. Most of these tales were dismissed as superstition or exaggeration until we began discovering creatures that match these descriptions. The oarfish, a ribbon-like fish that can grow up to 56 feet long, is now believed to be the source of many sea serpent sightings. These silvery giants normally live at depths of 3,000 feet or more, but occasionally surface when dying or disoriented. Their appearance is genuinely serpentine, with a bright red dorsal fin that runs the length of their body like a mane, and large, dinner plate-sized eyes. When one washed ashore in California in 2013, even marine biologists were taken aback by its alien appearance. Then there's the colossal squid, which we mentioned earlier, and its cousin, the giant squid. Both were considered mythological until relatively recently. The first photographs of a live giant squid weren't captured until 2004, and the first video footage came only in 2012. These creatures, with their massive eyes and tentacles lined with tooth-like suckers, match almost exactly the descriptions of the kraken in Norse mythology. Were ancient sailors encountering these deep-sea dwellers more frequently than we do today? Or did they simply pass down the rare sightings through generations, embellishing the details with each retelling? Submarine cryptids, however, remain firmly in the realm of the unexplained. The Cabarasaurus, allegedly inhabiting the waters off Vancouver Island, is described as having a horse-like head on a long neck with a serpentine body and flippers. Despite numerous sightings over the past century, including some by multiple witnesses, simultaneously no confirmed specimen has ever been captured or photographed clearly. Similarly, Lake Champlain's Champ and Scotland's Loch Ness Monster continue to evade definitive documentation despite their locations in relatively small, contained bodies of water connected to the ocean. Perhaps most intriguing is the theory that some of these cryptids could be surviving prehistoric marine reptiles. Similar to how the killanth, a fish thought extinct for 65 million years, was discovered very much alive in 1938. The vast majority of the ocean remains unexplored, and even in areas we consider well documented, new species are discovered regularly. Is it so impossible that some remnant population of plesiosaurs or mosasaurs could have survived in the deep trenches, occasionally venturing to the surface and giving rise to legends? The ocean's ability to preserve ancient life forms is well documented. The coelacanth is just one example. There's also the frilled shark, a species virtually unchanged for 80 million years that still swims the deep ocean with its 300 three-pointed teeth arranged in 25 rows. It looks exactly like what it is, a relic from the time of dinosaurs, a creature that has found its niche and had no evolutionary reason to change. When a living frilled shark was captured off the coast of Japan in 2007, it was described by marine biologists as a living fossil, a glimpse into Earth's distant past. Even more ancient is the horseshoe crab, which has remained essentially unchanged for 450 million years, surviving all 5 mass extinction events. These creatures were crawling along the ocean floor before plants had colonized land, before dinosaurs existed, before the continents had reached their current positions. They've watched the entire rise and fall of the dinosaurs, the emergence of mammals, the evolution of humans, all while remaining the same, perfect in their design, needing no improvements or adaptations. This persistence of ancient forms raises an unsettling question. If these creatures have survived for hundreds of millions of years in the ocean depths, what else might still be down there? The megalodon, a shark that grew to 60 feet in length, with teeth the size of human hands, is officially considered extinct, having disappeared about 3.6 to 6 million years ago. But the ocean is vast and much of it remains unexplored. Could a small population have survived in the deep trenches, occasionally rising to the surface to feed? The oceans have certainly hidden other surprises from us. The megamouth shark, a 16 FT filter feeder, wasn't discovered until 1976 when one became entangled in a Navy ship's anchor off the coast of Hawaii. Despite its massive size, only about 100 specimens have ever been documented. The fact that such a large animal could remain unknown to science until the late 20th century suggests that our understanding of marine life is still woefully incomplete. Similarly, the pondery shark was thought extinct until a specimen was caught in 2019, the first confirmed sighting in over 40 years. The number of extinct species rediscovered in the ocean continues to grow, suggesting that the final word on many supposedly lost creatures may be premature. The ocean, with its vast expanses and inaccessible depths, provides the perfect hiding place for species trying to escape human notice. But perhaps the most persistent marine crypt isn't a surviving prehistoric reptile or an undiscovered shark. It's the concept of mermaids. Cultures around the world, from ancient Assyria to modern-day Caribbean islands, have legends of half-human, half-fish beings inhabiting the oceans. The similarities in these stories, developed independently across different civilizations, has led some fringe researchers to suggest they might be based on actual encounters. In 2012, Animal Planet aired a mockumentary called Mermaids: The Body Found, which was presented in the documentary format. So convincing that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration felt compelled to issue an official statement clarifying that no evidence of aquatic humanoids has ever been found. The fact that a government agency found it necessary to debunk mermaids speaks to the persistent power of this particular ocean mystery. Why are we so captivated by the idea of human-like beings living in the sea? Is it simply because the ocean represents one of the few places on Earth where we can still imagine undiscovered wonders hiding just out of sight? The concept of undiscovered wonders brings us to another oceanic mystery: underwater bioluminescence. While we've known about the ability of some marine organisms to produce light for centuries, the extent and complexity of this phenomenon continues to surprise scientists. Recent deep-sea expeditions have revealed that the majority of creatures living below 1,000 ft have some bioluminescent capability. The deep ocean isn't dark at all. It's filled with living light, a constant show of blue-green sparkles, glowing patterns, and flashing signals. Some of these light displays are truly alien. The stoplight loose jaw, a small deep sea fish, produces red light from organs below its eyes, the only known fish to do so. This is significant because red light doesn't penetrate water well, meaning the stoplight loose jaw can illuminate prey that can't see the light it's using, like having an invisible flashlight. It's evolved not just the ability to create light, but to create a specific frequency of light that gives it a predatory advantage. Then there's the vampire squid, which doesn't just glow. It can manipulate the pattern and intensity of its bioluminescence to confuse predators. When threatened, it can activate thousands of light-producing organs called photophores and complex patterns, creating a disorienting light show that masks its actual location and movement. It's the biological equivalent of a warship deploying countermeasures to evade an incoming missile. Perhaps most eerily beautiful is the phenomenon of milky seas, vast areas of ocean that glow with a steady white light, sometimes covering thousands of square miles. These events are caused by bioluminescent bacteria growing in such numbers that they transform the ocean surface into a glowing plain. Sailors have reported sailing through these milky seas at night, their ships seeming to float on light itself, casting no shadows, the boundaries between water and air becoming indistinct in the ghostly illumination. Despite being documented in maritime literature for centuries, the first scientific confirmation of milky seas came only in 2005 when satellite imagery captured a milky sea event off the coast of Somalia that covered over 3,700 square miles. Even now, scientists aren't entirely sure why these bacteria sometimes bloom in such massive numbers or why they coordinate their bioluminescence over such vast areas. It's as if the ocean itself is trying to communicate in light, sending signals we can see but cannot yet understand. Light isn't the only form of communication happening in the oceans. Sound travels much farther and faster underwater than it does in air, making it the preferred medium for marine life to communicate across distances. Whales can hear each other across hundreds of miles of open ocean, their songs carrying information we're only beginning to decode. The songs of humpback whales are particularly complex, containing repeating phrases and themes that evolve over time, spreading from one population to another like a form of cultural transmission. All male humpbacks in a given region sing roughly The same song, but this song gradually changes over months and years. More remarkably, these changes are adopted by all singers, suggesting some form of consensus or learning. It's a form of cultural evolution happening entirely separate from human influence and alien intelligence, developing its own art forms in the ocean depths. Even more mysterious are the songs of the fin whale, which include infrasonic components, too low for human ears to detect without special equipment. These low-frequency sounds can travel for hundreds of miles underwater, allowing fin whales to communicate across entire ocean basins. But here's the truly strange part. The rhythm of these songs follows mathematical patterns similar to those found in human music and speech, suggesting an underlying structure that might serve a similar purpose to our own languages. Are whales telling stories to each other across the vastness of the ocean? Are they passing down their histories, their cultures, their knowledge of the world through these complex sonic tapestries? We know that cetaceans have large complex brains and sophisticated social structures. We know they can recognize themselves in mirrors, use tools, and display empathy. But the true extent of their intelligence and the content of their communications remains one of the ocean's most profound mysteries. Some researchers have gone so far as to suggest that cetaceans, particularly sperm whales with their massive brains, might possess a form of consciousness different from but comparable to our own. They may experience the world in ways we can barely imagine, perceiving it primarily through sound rather than sight. Their awareness extends for miles in all directions through their echolocation abilities. When they dive into the darkness of the deep, they aren't entering an unknown void as we would be. They can see with sound, building detailed mental maps of their surroundings through echoes. This alien form of perception might explain some of the strange behavior observed in deep-diving whales. Sperm whales, for instance, sometimes appear to enter a state similar to sleep while hanging vertically in the water column, a position called standing. But unlike true sleep, they remain aware of their surroundings during these periods. Some biologists have proposed that they might be processing the vast amounts of sensory information gathered during their dives, or possibly even communicating with each other telepathically using some as yet undiscovered mechanism. The idea of telepathic whales might sound far-fetched, but the ocean has surprised us before with phenomena that seemed impossible until they were documented. Consider the case of the immortal jellyfish we mentioned earlier, or the recently discovered marine organisms that can survive without oxygen by using sulfur instead. The conditions of the deep ocean are so different from our surface world that they've driven the evolution of abilities and adaptations that challenge our understanding of what's possible. This brings us to one of the ocean's most enduring mysteries, the phenomenon known as the bloop. In 1997, NOAA hydrophones detected an ultra-low frequency sound in the Pacific Ocean that was one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded. It was heard by sensors more than 3,000 mem apart. The sound profile resembled that of a living creature, but it was far louder than anything any known animal could produce. Even the blue whale, the largest animal on Earth. For years, the bloop remained unexplained, fueling speculation about massive unknown creatures lurking in the deep. Eventually, NOAA scientists concluded that it was most likely the sound of an ice quake, large ice sheets breaking apart in Antarctica. But not everyone is convinced by this explanation. The sound profile doesn't exactly match other recorded ice. And some marine biologists continue to wonder if there might be something else out there, something massive enough to generate sound waves of that magnitude. The bloop isn't the only mysterious sound recorded in the ocean. There's also Julia, a 15-second sound recorded in 1999 that remains unexplained. There's Slowdown, a sound that lasted several minutes and gradually decreased in frequency. There's an upsweep, first detected in 1991 and still heard seasonally. And there's Bioduck, a sound heard in the Southern Ocean since the 1960s that was finally traced to Antarctic minke whales in 2014, but only after puzzling scientists for over 50 years. The ocean is filled with sounds we don't understand, signals we can't decode, communications we can't interpret. It's a cacophony of alien conversations, most of which weren't intended for our ears. We're eavesdroppers on an ancient network of information exchange that predates human civilization by millions of years, and we've only just begun to listen. Some of the sounds we're hearing might not be communications at all, but rather the byproducts of geological or biological processes we don't yet comprehend. The ocean floor is constantly in motion, with tectonic plates shifting, undersea volcanoes erupting, and hydrothermal vents pumping superheated water into the cold depths. Each of these processes generates its own acoustic signature, creating a background noise that marine creatures have evolved to navigate and interpret. One particularly unsettling sound was recorded near the Mariana Trench in 2016, a metallic thing that rose and fell in a pattern too regular to be random, but too irregular to be easily explained by known geological processes. Some researchers nicknamed it the ghost choir because of its resemblance to discordant voices singing at different pitches. The current theory is that it's caused by the interaction of ocean currents with the unusual topography of the trench, creating something like a massive underwater pipe organ. But without direct observation at those extreme depths, it remains just a theory. The oceans don't just generate sounds, they also absorb them. Water is an excellent conductor of sound, and low-frequency sounds can travel enormous distances underwater with little degradation. This means that the oceans contain an acoustic record of sorts, a memory of sounds that have traveled through them. Theoretically, the low-frequency calls of whales from decades or even centuries ago could still be bouncing around the deep sound channels of the ocean, growing fainter but never completely disappearing. This acoustic memory of the ocean raises a disturbing possibility. The sounds of ships sinking, of hulls imploding under pressure, of sailors calling for help. These two might still be traveling through the deep sound channels, ghostly echoes of disasters long past. Submariners have occasionally reported hearing strange sounds through their hydrophones, sounds that don't match any known natural phenomenon or vessel. Could these be the lingering acoustic remnants of maritime tragedies still circulating in the ocean's depths? But let's move on to something perhaps even more unsettling. The mysteries that lie not in the water itself, but in what's beneath it. The ocean floor isn't solid and static. It's a dynamic boundary between the water world above and the geological processes below. And sometimes, what's below breaks through in terrifying ways. Consider the phenomenon of underwater methane vents, where this potent greenhouse gas bubbles up from deposits beneath the seafloor. In some locations, particularly in the Arctic, these vents are becoming more active as rising ocean temperatures melt the permafrost that previously kept the methane trapped. The release of this gas creates something sailors have feared for centuries: water that can no longer support the weight of a ship. When methane bubbles up in sufficient quantities, it decreases the density of the water, reducing its buoyancy. Ships that sail into these patches can suddenly sink with no storm, no collision, no apparent cause. They simply drop beneath the surface as if the ocean had opened up beneath them. This phenomenon might explain some of the mysterious disappearances attributed to places like the Bermuda Triangle, ships vanishing in calm seas without even a distress call, as if they were swallowed by the ocean itself. Even more alarming are underwater landslides, which can be triggered by earthquakes, volcanic activity, or simply the accumulated weight of sediment on unstable slopes. These submarine avalanches can be immense. The Stoga slide, which occurred off the coast of Norway about 8,200 years ago, involved the collapse of 770 cubic miles of sediment, creating a tsunami that flooded coastal areas across the North Sea. The wave would have hit with little warning. The ocean suddenly rises up to 65 ft above normal levels, sweeping away anything and anyone in its path. But the Stoga slide is far from unique. Geological evidence suggests that massive underwater landslides occur somewhere in the world's oceans. Every few thousand years, we're essentially living between these events in the quiet periods between catastrophes. And with sea levels rising due to climate change, the pressure on unstable underwater slopes is increasing, potentially making such events more likely in the future. Perhaps the most disturbing underwater geological feature is the existence of sleeping underwater volcanoes. Seamounts that appear dormant but could awaken at any time. The Pacific Ocean is littered with thousands of these seamounts, many of which haven't erupted in recorded history, but remain potentially active. An underwater volcanic eruption can create conditions unlike anything seen on land: massive steam explosions, toxic gas releases, and even the potential for tsunamis if the eruption is large enough. In 2018, the eruption of Anak Krakatau in Indonesia demonstrated the devastating potential of these events. The partial collapse of this volcano, much of which was underwater, created a tsunami that hit nearby coastlines with almost no warning, killing over 400 people. Unlike tsunamis caused by earthquakes, which often provide some warning time as the wave travels across the ocean, volcanically triggered tsunamis can arrive within minutes of the eruption, giving coastal communities little chance to evacuate. Beneath these volcanic seamounts lie even deeper mysteries. The ocean trenches that mark the boundaries between tectonic plates. These trenches aren't just passive features. They're active geological systems where one plate is being forced beneath another in a process called subduction. This creates some of the most powerful earthquakes on Earth, including the 2011 Tohoku earthquake that triggered the devastating Japanese tsunami. What makes these trench systems particularly unsettling is their unpredictability. Stress can build up along these plate boundaries for decades or even centuries, giving no obvious signs until it suddenly releases in a massive seismic event. It's like living above a spring that's being slowly compressed. There's no way to know exactly when it will snap back, only the certainty that eventually it will. The Cascadia subduction zone, which runs from Northern California up to Vancouver Island, demonstrates this frightening potential. Geological evidence suggests it produces magnitude 9.00 or greater earthquakes every 300 to 500 years. The last one occurred in January 1700, meaning we're now within the window for another event. When it happens, it could generate a tsunami comparable to the 2004 Indian Ocean event that killed over 230,000 people. These geological time bombs ticking beneath the ocean surface remind us of a fundamental truth. The solid ground we think we stand on is anything but solid. The earth beneath our feet is in constant motion, driven by forces so powerful we can barely comprehend them. And nowhere is this more evident than at the boundaries between land and sea, where the ocean's depths meet the edge of our familiar world. Let's move now to the places where the ocean directly interfaces with human civilization, our coastlines. These transitional zones, neither fully land nor fully sea, host their own unique mysteries and dangers. Consider the phenomenon of rogue holes, sudden dramatic drops in the seafloor close to shore that have swallowed swimmers without warning. Unlike rip currents, which pull swimmers horizontally away from the beach, rogue holes create a vertical danger. A sudden drop from shallow water to depths that can exceed 10 or 15 ft, they can form quickly when sandbars collapse or underwater topography shifts, creating what are essentially underwater sinkholes. A swimmer can be in waist-deep water one moment, and over their head the next with no visible warning of the danger. These features are particularly common along coastlines with active sediment movement, such as Florida's Gulf Coast or parts of Australia. Local knowledge often includes awareness of areas prone to developing these holes, but tourists and visitors may have no idea of the danger lurking just offshore. It's a reminder that the boundary between land and sea is not fixed, but fluid, constantly being reshaped by the ocean's forces. Even more dramatic are coastal sinkholes, where the land itself collapses into the sea. These can occur when underground. Caverns or car formations created by the slow dissolution of limestone by groundwater suddenly give way. In 2013, a massive sinkhole opened up on a Florida resort, swallowing buildings and forcing evacuations. The sight of solid ground simply disappearing into a gaping hole serves as a stark reminder of how tenuous our position really is. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of our coastlines is the evidence they contain of past disasters and the warnings of future ones. Along many Pacific coastlines, geologists have found sand deposits far inland, carried there by ancient tsunamis. These tsunami deposits tell stories of massive waves that swept miles inland, destroying everything in their path. By dating these deposits, scientists can reconstruct the history of tsunamis in a region, often revealing cycles of destruction that span centuries or millennia. In Japan, stone markers placed by ancestors warn future generations about tsunami dangers. Some are inscribed with messages like, "Do not build your homes below this point," or, "When an earthquake comes, beware the sea." Many of these markers are hundreds of years old, placed after devastating tsunamis in the past. Tragically, in some areas affected by the 2011 tsunami, development had occurred in zones explicitly warned against by these ancient markers. The wisdom of the ancestors, hard-won through suffering, had been forgotten or ignored. This cycle of disaster, warning, forgetting, and renewed disaster seems to be a constant in human interaction with the ocean. The sea gives us resources, transportation, and beauty, but it also takes without warning, without mercy. And our collective memory as a species seems too short to fully internalize its dangers. We build barrier islands that shift and move with storms. We develop coastal floodplains that have been repeatedly inundated throughout history. We treat the ocean as if it were a stable, predictable entity, when all evidence suggests it is anything but. The ocean's unpredictability extends to its weather patterns as well. Mariners have long known that the sea can generate its own weather, creating localized storms that appear with little warning. But some oceanic weather phenomena defy easy explanation even with our modern understanding of meteorology. Take, for instance, the phenomenon known as sea smoke or steam fog, which occurs when cold air passes over warmer water. While the basic mechanism is understood, the ways in which sea smoke can behave sometimes seem almost intentional, almost intelligent. Sailors report seeing columns of this fog that maintain their shape despite wind conditions that should disperse them, or witnessing it flow against the wind, creeping up the sides of vessels like probing fingers. Even more mysterious are the extreme weather events that occur in what sailors call weather holes, small areas of ocean where conditions can be radically different from the surrounding waters. Ships have reported sailing through patches of localized storms complete with lightning, hail, and gale-force winds, only to emerge on the other side to find calm seas and clear skies. These micros can appear and disappear in hours, leaving no trace except in the logbooks of the vessels unfortunate enough to encounter them. One particularly strange weather phenomenon is the ghost storm radar echoes showing storm systems where none visibly exist. Marine radar operators sometimes detect what appear to be massive storm fronts, complete with precipitation and wind patterns. Yet ships passing through these areas report normal conditions. Some meteorologists suggest these ghost storms might be caused by unusual atmospheric conditions that bend radar waves, creating false returns. Others propose they might represent real atmospheric disturbances that are somehow invisible to the human eye but detectable by radar. The unexplained weather extends to phenomena like killer waves or sleeper waves, individual waves that are dramatically larger than those around them, appearing without warning on otherwise calm beaches. Unlike tsunami waves, which are caused by seismic activity and affect entire coastlines, sleeper waves are localized and often occur during relatively mild sea conditions. They've been known to sweep people off coastal rocks or beaches who had no reason to expect danger. The ocean seemingly reaches out to claim specific victims. Coastal communities around the world have folklore about these waves, often describing them as sentient or purposeful. In Ireland, they're sometimes called hungry waves, believed to be looking for souls to take back to the sea. In Hawaii, some traditional beliefs hold that certain waves are manifestations of ancestor spirits, returning to visit or to take someone with them when they leave. These beliefs reflect a fundamental truth about the ocean that science sometimes fails to capture. Its apparent randomness often feels personal, intentional, as if the sea itself were making choices about when and how to interact with the human world. This sense of the ocean as a conscious entity extends to one of the most persistent maritime mysteries, the concept of ghost ships or phantom ships seen at sea. Unlike the abandoned vessels we discussed earlier, these are ships that appear and disappear, that seem to sail against the wind or navigate impossible courses that are seen by multiple witnesses but leave no physical trace of their passage. The most famous of these is the Flying Dutchman, allegedly doomed to sail the oceans forever, unable to make port. Sightings of this legendary vessel have been reported by sailors for centuries, including documented accounts from the crew of a British royal yacht in 1881 and passengers aboard a German submarine during World War II. The consistency of these reports across different eras and locations has led some researchers to suggest they might represent some kind of atmospheric mirage, perhaps reflecting real ships located beyond the horizon. But other phantom ship sightings are harder to explain. In the 1960s, multiple ships in the North Atlantic reported encounters with a sailing vessel matching the description of a Carol A during a schooner that had been found abandoned off Cape Paris in 1921. The reports described a vessel under full sail but with no crew visible on deck, moving at speed regardless of wind conditions. Coast Guard investigations found no record of any similar vessel operating in the area during the times of the sightings. These phantom ships aren't just legends from the age of sail. In 2009, the crew of a Chinese container vessel reported seeing a massive cruise ship with all lights blazing, sailing in the opposite direction during a storm in the South China Sea. Radar showed no other vessels in the area, and subsequent checks confirmed that no cruise ships were operating in that region. At the time, all 16 crew members witnessed the phantom ship, which they described as appearing and disappearing within minutes, visible through the storm, despite conditions that should have made it impossible to see anything at that distance. Are these sightings mirages, hallucinations brought on by the stress and isolation of life at sea, or do they represent something else? Glimpses of vessels from other times, other dimensions, other possibilities. The ocean's vastness and mystery have always made it a canvas for human imagination, a place where the boundaries between the real and the unreal seem to blur. And perhaps that's the true source of our fascination with the sea. It's one of the few places left on Earth where mystery remains not just possible, but inevitable. Every ocean voyage is in a sense an act of faith. Faith that the vessel will stay afloat, that storms won't appear, that the vast depths below won't somehow reach up and pull you down. Sailors develop rituals and superstitions to manage this uncertainty, to create a sense of control in an environment where control is largely illusory. They don't whistle aboard ships for fear of whistling up a wind. They don't say the word pig or bring bananas aboard. They toast absent friends to honor those lost to the sea. These practices might seem irrational in our modern scientific world, but they reflect a deeper truth about the ocean that statistics and meteorology can never quite capture. The sea is not just a physical environment, but a psychological one as well. A landscape of the mind where our deepest fears and wonders find expression. It represents the unknown, the untamable, the parts of existence that remain beyond human understanding or control. This psychological dimension of the ocean manifests in the phenomenon of sea fever, the irresistible call that draws people back to the water despite its dangers. Sailors who've survived shipwrecks, who've watched friends disappear beneath the waves, who know firsthand the ocean's capacity for destruction, still return to it again and again. There's something in the sea's vastness that speaks to something in the human spirit, a resonance between our internal depths and the physical depths of the ocean. The writer Joseph Conrad, who spent years as a merchant marine officer before becoming a novelist, described this connection in haunting terms. The sea has never been friendly to man. At most, it has been the accomplice of human restlessness. Yet, even as he acknowledged his danger, he couldn't stay away from it, returning to the sea in his writing, if not in person, wrestling with its mysteries until the end of his life. This restlessness, this compulsion to explore despite the dangers, has driven humans to push the boundaries of ocean exploration throughout history. From the Polynesian navigators who crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using only the stars and currents as guides, to modern deep-sea explorers using advanced submersibles to visit the ocean's greatest depths, we have never been able to resist the sea's call. And with each new exploration, each new technology that allows us to peer a little further into the abyss, we discover not answers, but more questions. The ocean reveals itself to us layer by layer, mystery by mystery, always holding something back, always keeping its deepest secrets just beyond our reach. It's as if the sea itself were alive, conscious, deliberately parceling out its wonders and horrors at a pace it determines, revealing only what it chooses to reveal. Perhaps that's why the ocean features so prominently in our concepts of the supernatural and the divine. Many creation myths begin with a primordial sea from which life emerges. Gods and goddesses of the ocean appear in virtually every maritime culture, from Neptune to Poseidon to Namaka. The sea represents both a source of life and its greatest threat, the beginning and the end, the alpha and omega of existence. In some traditions, the souls of the drowned remain in the ocean, neither fully dead nor truly alive, trapped in a liminal state between worlds. Japanese folklore speaks of the fair, the ghosts of those who died at sea, who appear on foggy nights to lure the living into the water to join them. Hawaiian mythology describes night marchers, the ghosts of ancient warriors who travel from the sea to sacred sites, bringing death to any living person who looks directly at them. These beliefs reflect a universal human intuition about the ocean, that it is not merely a physical feature of our planet, but a boundary between worlds, a place where the normal rules of existence are suspended. In the depths, time seems to move differently. Sunken ships from centuries ago appear nearly preserved, as if they sank just yesterday. Ancient life forms continue to thrive unchanged for millions of years. The usual progression of decay and renewal that we observe on land operates according to different rules in the ocean's cold, pressurized environment. This suspension of normal physical laws contributes to the ocean's mystique, its status as a place where anything seems possible. And indeed, the history of marine science is largely a history of discovering that many things once thought impossible are not just possible, but common in the ocean depths. Fish that generate electricity, creatures that live without sunlight, organisms that can withstand pressures that would crush a submarine. With each new discovery, the boundary between the possible and the impossible shifts, and what once seemed like superstition or fantasy becomes acknowledged fact. Consider the case of bioluminescence, which we discussed earlier. Sailors have reported seeing the ocean glow at night for centuries, describing vast stretches of water that shine with an otherworldly light. These accounts were often dismissed as exaggerations or hallucinations until science confirmed not only that such phenomena exist, but that they're relatively common. The sailors were right all along, their eyes witnessing something real that science had yet to explain. How many other maritime myths might contain kernels of truth, observations of real phenomena that we simply haven't documented or explained yet? How many sightings of sea monsters, ghost ships, or unexplained lights might represent genuine encounters with aspects of the ocean that science has yet to categorize? The history of marine biology suggests we should be cautious about dismissing such reports too quickly. Even the modern scientific understanding of the ocean leaves room for profound mystery. Consider the case of ocean memory, the discovery that the sea retains imprints of past conditions far longer than previously thought. Recent research has shown that patterns of temperature and salinity can persist for decades or even centuries. The ocean remembers climatic conditions long after they've changed on the surface. This physical memory of the ocean parallels the cultural memories contained in maritime folklore and tradition. Sailor stories passed down through generations preserve knowledge of ocean behavior that sometimes predates scientific understanding. Traditional Polynesian navigators could read the ocean in ways that Western mariners couldn't comprehend, detecting islands beyond the horizon by observing subtle changes in wave patterns, cloud formations, or the behavior of marine life. The ocean, it seems, contains many forms of memory: physical, biological, cultural, each operating on different time scales, each preserving different aspects of its vast history. And we, as relatively recent arrivals on this blue planet, are still learning how to access and interpret these memories, still developing the vocabulary to describe what the ocean already knows. This brings us to perhaps the most profound ocean mystery of all, the question of its consciousness, not in the human sense of self-awareness, but in the broader sense of a complex system that processes information, responds to stimuli, and maintains itself through countless feedback loops and interconnections. The ocean as a whole displays behaviors that in some ways mimic what we recognize as intelligence. It regulates its own chemistry through biological and geological processes. It generates and sustains countless forms of life. It creates and maintains patterns of circulation that distribute heat and nutrients across the planet. It remembers past conditions and adjusts to new ones. It's not alive in the way a single organism is alive, but it's far from inanimate or inert. Some philosophers and scientists have proposed viewing the Earth as a single integrated system, the Gaia hypothesis, with the ocean as a crucial component of this planetary organism. From this perspective, the sea isn't just a setting where life occurs, but an active participant in the creation and maintenance of life, a vital organ in the body of the planet. This conception of the ocean as part of a living system might help explain why humans feel such a profound connection to it, why we're drawn to its shores and depths, despite the dangers. Perhaps we recognize on some instinctive level that the sea is not alien to us, but integral to us, that its rhythms and processes are fundamental to our existence on this planet. After all, our bodies contain the same salt concentration as ancient oceans. Our blood plasma is remarkably similar to seawater. We carry the ocean within us, a physical memory of our evolutionary origins. And the ocean, in turn, carries us not just our ships and submarines, but our waste, our dead, our history as a species. It receives everything we give it, willing or unwilling, and transforms it according to its own processes and timescales. Plastic bottles become microplastics, iron becomes rust, bodies become bone, then sediment, then perhaps someday stone. Nothing we place in the ocean remains unchanged, yet nothing is ever truly lost. This eternal cycle of transformation gives the ocean a time frame that dwarfs human existence. The waves that crash on our shores today contain water molecules that may have fallen as rain on dinosaurs, that may have been drunk by Caesar, that may have formed part of the clouds that the first humans gazed up at in wonder. The ocean connects us not just across space, but across time, linking all eras of Earth's history in its constant movement and change. And yet, despite this continuity, the ocean remains fundamentally mysterious to us. A world we can visit, but never truly inhabit. A realm where we are always guests rather than residents. Even our most advanced submarines can only remain submerged for months, not years. Our deepest dives are measured in hours or minutes. The pressure, the darkness, the cold, all conspire to remind us that we are creatures of the land who venture into the sea only temporarily and at great risk. This status as visitors rather than inhabitants shapes our relationship with the ocean and contributes to its mystery. We can never truly know it as we know the land because we can never fully experience it. Our perceptions are limited by our biology, our technology, our brief spans of time beneath the surface. We catch glimpses, fragments, moments of understanding, but the full reality of oceanic existence remains beyond our grasp. Perhaps this is why the ocean features so prominently in our conceptions of the infinite and the eternal. Looking out over the sea, watching waves that have been moving since before humans existed and will continue long after we're gone, we confront the limits of our understanding and the brevity of our existence. The ocean reminds us that we are small, temporary, limited in ways we prefer not to acknowledge, and yet it also connects us to something larger than ourselves, something that transcends individual human lives or even the entire span of human civilization. The same forces that shape the ocean, gravity, thermodynamics, and chemistry, shape the entire universe. The patterns of waves breaking on a beach echo the patterns of galaxies forming in deep space. The ocean is both intensely local, the specific beach or coast we might stand upon, and cosmically universal, a manifestation of physical principles that operate throughout reality. This dual nature, simultaneously immediate and infinite, may explain the ocean's powerful hold on human imagination and emotion. Standing at the edge of the sea, we stand at the edge of ourselves, at the boundary between what we know and what we can never fully know. We are confronted with mystery in its purest form. Not a puzzle to be solved, but a reality to be experienced, a depth that can never be fully plumbed. As night falls and you drift towards sleep, listening to these tales of the ocean's mysteries, remember that the sea continues its eternal movements, just as it has for billions of years. Waves rise and fall, currents circulate, creatures hunt and flee in the darkness. The great cycle continues with or without human observation. The vast majority of its processes and patterns are hidden from our view. The ocean keeps its secrets not out of malice, but because that is its nature. It is too vast, too deep, too ancient to be fully known by creatures as recent and limited as ourselves. Perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps the greatest gift the ocean gives us is not its resources or its beauty, but its mystery, its reminder that the world is larger and stranger than our concepts can contain. That reality exceeds our understanding of it. As you sleep, the ocean continues. As you dream, the depths remain. And perhaps in those moments between wakefulness and sleep, you might sense something of the ocean's true nature, not as a place or a thing, but as a process, a becoming, an endless transformation that includes us, but is not limited to us. The sea is within you as much as you are beside it, a resonance between your own depths and the planet's waters. In that resonance, in that connection between the known and the unknown, the human and the oceanic, lies a different kind of understanding, Not the clear light of scientific explanation, but the twilight of mystery where wonder and fear mingle and boundaries dissolve. It is the understanding that comes not from mastery, but from surrender, from acknowledging that some things will always remain beyond our grasp, that the horizon will always recede as we approach it. And so we return to shore, leaving the depths to their darkness and their secrets. We return, changed, humbled, perhaps a little more aware of the vastness that surrounds our small certainties. The ocean has shown us glimpses of itself, enough to fascinate, but not enough to satisfy, enough to draw us back again and again to its ever-changing surface and its unchanging mystery. That perhaps is the final and most profound secret of the sea, not what it hides from us, but what it reveals to us about ourselves. In facing the ocean, we face our own limitations, our own smallness in the cosmic scale. Yet we also discover our connection to something ancient and enduring, something that transcends individual human lives and links us to the deepest history of our planet. The ocean, in its vastness and mystery, offers us a mirror in which we can see both our insignificance and our significance, our separateness and our connection. It reminds us that we are simultaneously unique in our consciousness and utterly typical in our materiality, both exceptional and ordinary in the grand scheme of existence. As you drift off to sleep, carry with you this dual awareness of the ocean's mystery and your place within it, of the depths that remain unexplored and the surface where we make our temporary home. Let the rhythm of the waves, whether heard in person or only in imagination, remind you of the greater rhythms that move through all things, connecting each moment to all moments, each place to all places. The ocean's story is our story, its depths, its mysteries, our mysteries. In the end, we do not solve the enigma of the sea. We merely learn to live within it, to navigate its uncertainties with the same mixture of courage and humility that sailors have always needed. And perhaps that's enough, not to know everything, but to know that we don't know everything, to maintain our wonder in the face of the vast and the mysterious. Sleep now with the ocean's secrets swirling through your dreams. Tomorrow, the sea will still be there, still changing, still enduring, still holding mysteries we have yet to imagine. And we will continue our human journey alongside it, both haunted and blessed by its impenetrable depths and its endless horizons. The tide goes out, but it always returns. The wave breaks, but another follows. The story ends, but the ocean remains. And in that continuity, that eternal cycle of renewal and mystery, we find both our deepest fears and our greatest comfort. Good night. Sleep well. And remember, the ocean is always there, always moving, always whispering its secrets to those who learn to listen. And if you hear something in your dreams tonight, something like the sound of waves on a distant shore, or the call of creatures that have never seen the light, don't be afraid. It's just the ocean reaching out to you as it has reached out to humans throughout our history, reminding you of its presence, its power, and its endless, unfathomable mystery. Rest now knowing that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but simply experienced, not conquered, but contemplated. The ocean will be here when you wake, and all its secrets will be waiting for you. Hidden in plain sight, visible yet unknowable, familiar yet eternally strange. Sleep and let the tides of dreams carry you where they will. The ocean watches, the ocean reigns, the ocean remembers, and perhaps in your dreams you might remember, too, what it was to be part of the sea. Before we crawled onto land, before we forgot our origins in the ancient waters of a young earth, sleep now with salt and your blood and tides in your breath, a land creature dreaming of the sea, the ocean's Mysteries will be here tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that, for as long as water flows and humans wonder what lies beneath the waves. As your consciousness ebbs like a retreating tide, let's explore a few more oceanic enigmas, the kind that exists at the very edge of scientific understanding. The ocean is not just a physical environment, but a psychological and perhaps even spiritual one as well. A landscape where the boundaries between reality and imagination, between science and folklore, often blur like the horizon line on a foggy day. Many who spend their lives at sea report experiences that defy conventional explanation, phenomena that exist in the liminal space between the known and the unknown. Consider the phenomenon that sailors call the call of the void, a sudden, inexplicable urge to jump into the ocean when looking down from a ship's railing. This experience is so common among maritime workers that many ships have protocols specifically designed to prevent it, with rules against solitary nighttime watches for certain crew members. Psychologists suggest it might be a form of intrusive thought, a misinterpreting of the brain's warning system, but those who've experienced it often describe it differently, as if the sea itself were exerting a pull, as if something beneath the waves were calling to something within themselves. The feeling passes quickly for most, leaving only an unsettling memory. But for others, it returns night after night, a persistent whisper from the depths that becomes increasingly difficult to resist. Related to this is the condition known as aquatic hypnosis, a trance-like state reported by survivors of shipwrecks and maritime accidents who've spent extended periods floating in open water. These individuals describe entering an altered state of consciousness where time seems to stretch or compress, where vivid hallucinations feel more real than reality itself, and where they experience a profound sense of communion with the ocean around them. Some report conversations with entities they perceive in the water, beings that seem neither human nor animal, but something else entirely. Marine psychologists attribute these experiences to a combination of dehydration, hypothermia, and the rhythmic sensory input of waves, but the consistency of these reports across cultures and time periods has led some researchers to wonder if there might be something more happening in these liminal moments between life and death, between land-dwelling consciousness and the vast otherness of the sea. The ocean seems particularly adept at generating altered states of consciousness, even in less extreme circumstances. Many experienced divers report entering what they call the blue mind, a state of meditative calm and mental clarity that occurs during deep dives. In this state, the boundaries between self and environment seem to dissolve. Time perception changes, and divers often report insights or realizations that wouldn't be accessible to their normal waking consciousness. Some describe it as similar to deep meditation or certain psychedelic experiences, a temporary dissolution of the ego in the face of something vast and non-human. Neuroscientists suggest this might be related to the increased pressure and altered breathing patterns of deep diving, which affect blood oxygen levels and therefore brain function. But many who've experienced it believe there's something more happening, that the ocean environment itself somehow facilitates a different mode of consciousness, a way of being that's normally inaccessible to land-dwelling humans. This altered relationship with time seems to be a recurring theme in oceanic experiences. Sailors on long voyages often report what they call sea time, a significant distortion in their perception of temporal flow, where days can seem to stretch into weeks or compress into hours. Even with modern timekeeping devices, crew members on extended voyages frequently lose track of what day it is, experiencing time not as a linear progression, but as a series of cycles determined by watches, tides, and weather, rather than clocks and calendars. Some maritime anthropologists have suggested that this different relationship of time might have been the norm for humans before the Industrial Revolution and the standardization of time. a more natural rhythm that modern life has largely forgotten, but that the ocean still enforces on those who venture into its realm. The ocean seems to generate not just temporal anomalies, but spatial ones as well. Sailors throughout history have reported encounters with what they call false horizons or threshold islands, land masses that appear clearly visible, sometimes for hours, only to vanish when approached. Unlike conventional mirages, which typically last only moments, these phantom lands can persist in vision long enough for ships to change course toward them, only to discover empty ocean where solid land had appeared to be. In the days before accurate charts and GPS, numerous expeditions were launched to find islands that had been discovered multiple times by reputable captains, only to prove non-existent when deliberately sought. The Auroras, Buss Island, Twanaki, and Thompson Island all appeared on maps for decades or even centuries before being proven to be phantoms, raising the question of how so many experienced sailors could have been so consistently wrong about something as fundamental as the existence of land. Some of these phantom islands may have been optical illusions caused by unusual atmospheric conditions, while others might have been actual land masses that later sank due to volcanic activity or rising sea levels. But some remain difficult to explain by any conventional mechanism, particularly those that were reported by multiple independent observers over periods of years or decades, sometimes with details consistent enough to allow for detailed mapping. These cases suggest either a form of collective hallucination specific to the maritime environment, or perhaps some property of the ocean itself that occasionally generates convincing similarities of land masses under certain conditions. The ocean's capacity for generating illusions extends beneath the surface as well. Deep-sea explorers report a phenomenon called depth narcosis, or the rapture of the deep, a state of altered consciousness similar to alcohol intoxication that occurs at depths. Below about 100 ft, in this state, divers experience euphoria, overconfidence, and sometimes hallucinations. Their judgment impaired by the increased partial pressure of nitrogen in their breathing gas. What makes depth narcosis particularly dangerous is that divers experiencing it often feel perfectly lucid, unaware that their perception and decision have been compromised. They may remove breathing apparatus, believing they can breathe water, or swim deeper rather than ascending when their air runs low. Drawn by a sensation that something important lies just a little further down in the darkness. Many who've experienced depth of narcosis report encountering what they describe as presences in the deep entities that seem to watch from just beyond the range of visibility. Beings that communicate through thought rather than sound. Most dismissed these encounters as straightforward hallucinations upon returning to the surface. But some remain convinced that what they experienced was real, that the altered state of consciousness somehow allowed them to perceive aspects of the ocean environment normally filtered out by ordinary awareness. This interpretation aligns with the traditional beliefs of many indigenous maritime cultures, which hold that the deep sea is inhabited by entities that can only be perceived in dreams or visionary states, beings that exist alongside us but remain invisible to ordinary consciousness. Indigenous traditions worldwide contain remarkably consistent descriptions of oceanic entities. Despite developing in isolation from each other, from the Inuit Kalapo to the Japanese Umu to the Greek ocean nymphs, cultures with maritime traditions almost universally describe humanoid beings that dwell in the depths, occasionally interacting with humans in ways both beneficial and harmful. These entities are typically described not as gods to be worshipped, but as neighbors to be respected. Other forms of intelligence with their own societies and purposes, largely indifferent to human concerns, but occasionally taking interest in individual humans for reasons of their own. The consistency of these traditions across cultures that had no contact with each other raises interesting questions about their origins. Are they purely psychological projections? The human mind's attempt to personify the ocean's otherness, Or could they reflect actual encounters with something in the marine environment that we don't yet understand? Modern science generally dismisses such traditions as superstition, but occasionally phenomena emerge that suggests the boundary between folklore and reality might be more permeable than we typically assume. In 2012, for instance, oceanographers, recording ambient sound in the Mariana Trench, captured what they called the Western Pacific bowang, a complex metallic-sounding call unlike any known marine mammal vocalization. The sound begins with a low moan, shifts to a metallic-sounding twang, and ends with a series of down-sweep pulses that some listeners have described as resembling distorted speech. Despite years of analysis, scientists have been unable to definitively identify the source of this sound, though the leading theory attributes it to a new type of call from minke whales. But some marine biologists remain unconvinced, noting that the sound's complexity and structure differ significantly from all known whale vocalizations, suggesting either a completely new behavior or possibly a source that isn't biological at all. This is just one of many unidentified underwater sounds that challenge our understanding of the ocean's acoustic environment. There's the whistle, a high-pitched sound reported by submariners since the 1950s that seems to follow certain vessels, always maintaining the same distance regardless of speed or course changes. There's the ping, a regular mechanical-sounding pulse detected in the Arctic Ocean in 2016 that drove wildlife away from a region traditionally rich in marine mammals. There's the hum, a continuous low-frequency drone recorded near the mid-Atlantic ridge that has persisted for decades, rising and falling in intensity with no apparent pattern or source. Each of these sounds has been investigated by military and scientific organizations, yet none has been definitively explained, leaving open the possibility that there are acoustic phenomena in the ocean, whether biological, geological, or something else that lie completely outside our current understanding. The ocean's acoustic mysteries extend to what some researchers call marine acoustic anomalies, or MAS. Sounds that appear to defy the known laws of underwater acoustics. These include sounds that seem to originate from multiple locations simultaneously, vocalizations that change frequency in ways that should be physically impossible for any known organism, and signals that appear to anticipate and respond to human-generated sounds and patterns suggesting intelligence rather than random coincidence. Most mainstream scientists attribute these anomalies to equipment malfunctions, complex echoes, or misinterpretation of data. But a small group of researchers, many with backgrounds in marine acoustics and signal processing, maintain that at least some MAS represent genuine anomalies that cannot be explained by current scientific models. They suggest that these sounds might be generated by unknown physical processes, undiscovered marine species, or even in the most speculative interpretations, intelligent activity of non-human origin. This last possibility that the ocean might harbor forms of intelligence radically different from our own recurs throughout both scientific and folkloric approaches to marine mysteries. Consider the growing scientific recognition of cetacean intelligence, particularly that of sperm whales, whose brains are the largest on Earth and contain specialized neurons called tonic cells, previously thought to exist only in humans and great apes. These cells are associated with social cognition, empathy, and self-awareness, the very qualities that we consider foundations of human consciousness. Yet these massive brain beings exist in an environment utterly alien to our experience, perceiving their world primarily through sound rather than sight. Their social structures spanning oceanic basins, their lives playing out in a three-dimensional realm where our notions of territory, resource competition, and even individual identity may be largely irrelevant. Some cetacean researchers have proposed that whales and dolphins may possess a form of consciousness as complex as our own, but so different in its structure and expression that we've largely failed to recognize it. Their societies appear to lack the material culture that we consider hallmarks of intelligence, They build no structures, create no tools that outlast their use, leave no artifacts for future generations. Instead, their culture appears to be entirely social and acoustic, existing in the relationships between individuals and in the songs and vocalizations that can travel thousands of miles through the ocean sound channels. What might intelligence look like when developed in such a radically different environment with different sensory priorities, different physical capabilities, and different survival challenges? Would we even recognize it as intelligence if we encountered it? Or would it appear to us as just another aspect of the ocean's aliveness, its fundamental otherness from our terrestrial experience? This question becomes even more complex when we consider the distributed intelligence of certain marine organisms like coral reefs, colonial entities composed of millions of individual polyps that together create structures as complex and varied as cities, adapting to local conditions, solving environmental problems, and persisting for centuries or even millennia. Are coral reefs intelligent in some meaningful sense? They process information, respond to threats, allocate resources, and even appear to remember past conditions through chemical changes in their structures. They lack brains as we understand them, yet they demonstrate many behaviors that in other contexts we might consider evidence of cognition. The traditional distinction between organism and environment breaks down in marine ecosystems where symbiotic relationships create entities that are neither fully one nor fully many, neither clearly individual nor clearly collective. Perhaps the ocean challenges not just our understanding of what intelligence is, but our entire conception of individuality and identity. In the terrestrial environment where humans evolved, the boundaries between organisms are generally clear. A tree is distinct from the ground in which it grows, a wolf separate from the deer it hunts. But in the ocean, these boundaries often blur. Consider the Portuguese man of war, which appears to be a single jellyfish-like organism, but is actually a colonial Siphon 04 composed of specialized zoos that are genetically identical but morphologically and functionally distinct. It is neither one animal nor many, but something that exists in the space between these categories, challenging our binary thinking with its fluid, contextual existence. This blurring of boundaries extends to the relationship between organism and environment in marine ecosystems. The water column is not just the medium in which sea creatures live, but an integral part of their physiological processes. Oxygen, nutrients, waste products, hormones, and communication chemicals all flow continuously between organism and environment, making the distinction between self and other far less clear than it is on land. Many marine organisms don't actively seek food, but rather filter it from the surrounding water. Their bodies are designed not to pursue resources, but to process what the ocean currents bring to them. Their relationship with their environment is not one of actor and stage, but of co-created reality, each shaping the other in continuous feedback loops that have no clear beginning or end. Perhaps this is why the ocean often evokes in humans a sense of dissolution, a feeling that the boundaries of the self become more permeable in its presence. Surfers describe experiences of becoming one with the wave, their sense of separate identity temporarily suspended as they merge with the ocean's movement. Swimmers report a uniquely oceanic sense of peace that comes from being supported by the water, held in a medium that touches every part of them simultaneously. Even standing at the shore, watching waves break and recede, can induce a meditative state in which the mind's constant self-referential activity quiets, allowing a different kind of awareness to emerge. Is this merely poetic thinking, a romantic projection of human longing onto a non-human environment? Or does it reflect something real about our relationship with the ocean? A recognition, perhaps, that we are not as separate from our environment as our terrestrial existence leads us to believe. After all, our bodies are approximately 60% water, our cells bathed in fluids not so different in their chemical composition from the ancient seas where life first emerged. Our heartbeats follow, rhythms not unlike the tides. Our brains float in cerebrospinal fluid that cushions and protects them just as the ocean cushions and protects the life within it. We are in a very real sense walking oceans, terrestrial extensions of the sea's chemical and biological processes. This perspective that humans are essentially marine organisms that have adapted to land is supported by our developmental biology. Human embryos develop gill-like structures during early formation, later modified into other tissues as development proceeds. Our inner ears contain fluid that enables our sense of balance, a system essentially unchanged from our fish ancestors. Even our tears contain the same salt concentration as the ocean, a chemical memory of our evolutionary origins preserved across millions of years of terrestrial adaptation. We may live on land, but the ocean lives within us, present in every cell and system of our bodies. Perhaps this is why we respond so powerfully to the sea. Why? Its rhythms can calm us, its vastness inspires us, its dangers terrify us in ways that seem to bypass conscious thought and reach directly into our oldest neural pathways. The ocean speaks to something pre-verbal in us, a level of awareness that predates language and even perhaps individual consciousness. It connects us to a time before humans, before mammals, before the distinction between self and world had fully emerged in the evolutionary process. When we stand at the edge of the sea, we stand also at the edge of ourselves, at the boundary between what we think we are and what we truly are beneath the constructs of identity and individuality. This boundary state, this liminality, may explain why the ocean features so prominently in spiritual traditions worldwide. From baptism to ritual bathing, from sea burial to offerings cast into the waves, human religions have long recognized the ocean as a threshold between states of being. Water in general and the sea in particular represents transformation, the dissolution of one form to allow the emergence of another. It is both destroyer and creator, taking life and giving it in the same eternal cycle, indifferent to human categories, of good and evil, beginning and end. The ocean's spiritual significance extends beyond organized religion to personal experiences of transcendence and awe. Many report a sense of the sublime when confronting the sea's vastness, a feeling that combines terror and beauty in a way that transcends ordinary aesthetic experience. This oceanic feeling, a term coined by Roma Roland and later adopted by Sigmund Freud, describes a sensation of being connected to something immeasurably larger than oneself, a dissolution of the ego boundaries that normally separate self from world. It is essentially a mystical experience, one that can occur spontaneously even for those with no religious beliefs or spiritual practices. Is this merely a psychological phenomenon, a reaction to the ocean's scale and power, or does it reflect something more fundamental about consciousness itself? A recognition perhaps that our normal sense of separate selfhood is in some sense an illusion, a useful evolutionary adaptation, but not an absolute truth. The ocean, with its fluid boundaries and interconnected systems, might offer a more accurate model for reality than the discrete independent objects that populate our terrestrial experience. Its vastness and mystery might remind us of the vastness and mystery within ourselves, the depths we typically ignore as we navigate the surface concerns of daily life. As you drift deeper into sleep, carried by these contemplations like a boat on gentle swells, consider that the boundary between waking and dreaming is itself a kind of shoreline, a liminal space where the solid ground of conscious thought gives way to the fluid realms of the unconscious. In dreams, as in the ocean, time and space become malleable, identities shift and merge, and the logical structures that order our waking lives dissolve into more fluid patterns of association and meaning. Perhaps dreaming is a return to an oceanic state of consciousness, a nightly immersion in the waters from which our individual awareness emerged. The parallels between deep ocean and deep dream continue beyond these phenomenological similarities. Both realms contain entities that seem both familiar and alien. Both operate according to logics that differ from our surface experience. Both reveal aspects of reality that remain hidden in ordinary awareness, and both can be frightening in their otherness, their refusal to conform to our expectations and desires. Like the deep ocean, the deep mind contains predators and dangers, entities that hunt in darkness, truths that we may not be prepared to face. But also like the ocean, the depths of consciousness contain wonders beyond imagination, creatures of extraordinary beauty, landscapes of breathtaking majesty. There are treasures in those depths, knowledge and wisdom that cannot be accessed by staying safely on the surface of awareness. To find them requires a kind of diving, a willingness to descend past the boundaries of the known into the mysterious. Regions beyond, it requires courage and preparation, respect for the power of what we might encounter, and humility in the face of forces larger than ourselves. The ocean teaches this humility more effectively than perhaps any other environment on Earth. Even the most experienced sailors know that the sea is ultimately untamable, that human technology and skill are always contingent, always vulnerable to forces beyond our control. A wave large enough, a storm strong enough, a depth great enough, and all our mastery counts for nothing. We are returned to our essential smallness, our fundamental fragility in the face of elemental power. Yet paradoxically, this recognition of our limitations can be liberating rather than frightening. There is a peace that comes with surrendering to forces larger than ourselves, with accepting that we are not separate from the world but embedded within it, subject to its rhythms and laws. The ocean doesn't care about our achievements or failures, our hopes or fears. It simply is existing in a perpetual present that stretches backward to the planet's beginnings and forward beyond any future we can imagine. As sleep deepens, as consciousness recedes like a tide pulling back from shore, allow yourself to be carried by these currents of thought into the deeper waters of unconsciousness. The mysteries we've explored, the ocean's depths, its creatures, its phenomena, both explained and unexplainable, will continue their existence whether we observe them or not. The waves will still break on distant shores, the abyssal plains will still lie in darkness, the great currents will still circle the planet in their slow, majestic dance. And perhaps in your dreams, freed from the constraints of waking logic and physical limitation, you might visit these places, might swim in the midnight zones, or float above hydrothermal vents, or witness the bioluminescent displays of deep-sea creatures. Dreams, like the ocean, operate according to their own logic, their own physics, their own sense of what's possible and what's not. In dreams, as in the deep sea, we might encounter versions of ourselves we hardly recognize, aspects of consciousness that remain submerged during waking hours. We might find ourselves breathing water, communicating with non-human entities, transcending the boundaries that normally define our existence. We might experience firsthand the oceanic feeling, the dissolution of self into something larger, the return to a state of consciousness that predates our individual emergence. As you sleep, as you dream, remember that the ocean's mysteries aren't separate from the mysteries of your own consciousness. The depths without reflect the depths within, each illuminating the other, each containing wonders and terrors in equal measure. The boundary between them is as fluid as the boundary between sea and shore, as permeable as the membrane between waking and dreaming. In exploring one, we explore the other, and perhaps discover that they are not two realms, but one, different manifestations of the same fundamental mystery. Rest now in that mystery, in the gentle rocking of mental waves, in the soft darkness of deep consciousness. The ocean will continue its eternal movements, its cycling of water and nutrients, its generation and destruction of life forms. And you will continue your journey through the inner oceans of sleep and dream, floating on currents of thought and feeling, perhaps encountering creatures from the depths of your own mind. Both journeys are natural, both necessary, both part of the greater cycles that contain and transcend individual existence. The tide goes out, but it always returns. The wave breaks, but another follows. Consciousness recedes, but it will rise again with the dawn. Sleep well, dream deep, and know that the ocean's mysteries await your return. Both the waters that cover our planet and the waters of awareness that flow within you, connecting you to all that is, all that has been, and all that might yet be. Good night, fellow traveler. On the seas of consciousness, may your dreams be as vast and mysterious as the ocean itself, and may you wake refreshed, having touched something of the depths that lie beneath the surface of ordinary awareness. The ocean's story is our story. Its depths are depths, its mysteries. Sleep now. And remember, we are never truly separate from the sea, never fully absent from its ancient ongoing story. We carry it within us. This memory of our origins, this echo of our beginning, salt in our blood, water in our cells, rhythms in our heartbeats that mirror the tides. We are the ocean, dreaming itself human. And in sleep perhaps we remember this truth that waking life obscures. Dream now of deep waters, of ancient currents, of mysteries without end. The ocean embraces you within and without, now and always. As your consciousness continues its gentle descent into the deeper waters of sleep, let's explore how the ocean has shaped human history, imagination, and destiny. The sea isn't just a physical feature of our planet, but a central character in the human story, influencing our migrations, our conflicts, our technologies, and our dreams of what might lie beyond the horizon. Throughout history, the ocean has been both barrier and highway, both prison and escape route, both provider and destroyer. It has connected cultures while keeping them separate, enabled both exploration and colonization, served as both battlefield and peaceful trading route. Our relationship with the sea reflects all the contradictions of human nature itself. Our courage and our fear, our curiosity and our caution, our capacity for wonder, and our tendency toward exploitation. Consider how the ocean shaped the course of human migration, creating both pathways and obstacles that determined where our ancestors settled and how they interacted. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that early humans used coastal routes for migration much earlier than previously thought, with maritime travel possibly dating back 130,000 years or more. These ancient seafarers didn't leave behind ships or written records, but their movements can be traced through genetics, archaeology, and the remnants of coastal settlements now submerged beneath rising seas. The first Americans may have traveled along the Pacific coast rather than through an inland ice-free corridor, as once thought using boats to move from Asia to North America, when much of the continent was still locked in ice. These journeys, undertaken with technologies we would consider primitive, represent some of the most remarkable achievements in human history. Yet we know almost nothing about the individuals who accomplished them, their motivations, their vessels, or the knowledge they must have possessed about celestial navigation and ocean currents. Later, maritime migrations would shape the modern world in ways that continue to reverberate today. The Polynesian expansion across the Pacific, covering over 16 million square miles of ocean between 300 BCE and 1200 CE, represents perhaps the most impressive feat of navigation in human history. Using only stars, cloud patterns, bird movements, and their intimate knowledge of ocean swells, Polynesian navigators found tiny islands separated by thousands of miles of open water. They didn't discover these islands by accident. but deliberately sailed toward them, carrying people, plants, animals, and cultural knowledge in double-hauled canoes, capable of crossing vast oceanic distances. This wasn't exploration as we typically conceive it. Uncertain ventures into the unknown, but purposeful journeys to destinations already mapped in oral tradition and navigational knowledge. The ocean to these mariners wasn't a barrier, but a known landscape with its own features and pathways, as familiar to them as roads and mountains might be to land dwellers. This intimate knowledge of the sea extended to many coastal cultures, creating maritime traditions that shaped their entire worldviews. The Haida of the Pacific Northwest developed sophisticated understandings of ocean ecology that allowed them to harvest marine resources sustainably for thousands of years. The Vaso people of Madagascar identify so strongly with the ocean that their name literally means people who fish, and a common saying holds that a Vaso away from the sea is not a Vaso. The sea gypsies of Southeast Asia, including the Mochin Bao and Oring Lao, spent so much time in and on the water that they developed physical adaptations, including enhanced underwater vision and enlarged spleens that allow for longer breath holding during deep dives. These cultures didn't view themselves as separate from the ocean, but as part of it, their identities and spiritualities inseparable from the marine environment that sustained them. This integration of human and oceanic life stands in stark contrast to the relationship that developed in many Western traditions, where the sea was often viewed as alien territory, a chaotic realm to be conquered rather than a home to be inhabited. The ancient Greeks and Romans, despite their extensive maritime trade, maintained a profound ambivalence toward the ocean, portraying it in their mythology as a place of monsters and divine caprice. Medieval European maps often depicted sea monsters lurking at the edges of known waters, while the phrase "here be dragons" marked uncharted, oceanic territories. This conception of the sea as fundamentally other, as a space beyond human law and understanding, would shape Western maritime expansion with often devastating consequences for the cultures encountered. The age of European exploration beginning in the 15th century transformed humanity's relationship with the ocean from regional interactions to a global network of trade, conquest, and cultural exchange. The sea routes established during this period created the first truly planetary economic system, connecting continents that had developed in isolation for thousands of years. Ships carried not just goods, but ideas, diseases, technologies, and people, both voluntary migrants and enslaved individuals torn from their homelands. The ocean became the primary medium through which globalization occurred, the liquid foundation of the modern world system with all its innovations and injustices. This maritime globalization left behind countless mysteries as ships disappeared, treasures were lost, and entire settlements vanished without explanation. The lost colony of Roanoke, established in 1585 and found deserted in 1590 with only the cryptic wording carved on a post, might have been relocated via maritime escape, their fate tied to the ocean that connected their island to the mainland. The Mary Celeste, found drifting in 1872 with no crew aboard, but otherwise in good condition, remains one of the most famous maritime mysteries. The fate of her crew is still debated by historians and mystery enthusiasts alike. The disappearance of the lighthouse keepers from Flynn in 1900, the disappearance of Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt while swimming in 1967, the loss of Flight 19 over the Bermuda Triangle in 1945, each represents a moment when the ocean reclaimed human lives without providing the closure of definitive explanation. The sea preserves some secrets while revealing others. Its currents, sometimes returning evidence of tragedies years or decades after they occurred. Messages and bottles cast from sinking ships have been found decades later, providing final communications from those lost at sea. Debris from aircraft crashes may circle ocean gyms for years before washing ashore thousands of miles from the accident site. Each piece is a fragment of a larger story. Mostly hidden beneath the waves, the ocean's currents act as a kind of memory, holding and occasionally releasing traces of past events according to patterns we can model but never perfectly predict. This unpredictability extends to how the ocean influences human conflict, serving variously as battleground, boundary, and strategic asset. Naval warfare has decided the fate of empires since at least the Battle of Salamis in 480 BCE, when outnumbered Greek forces defeated the Persian fleet and changed the course of Western history. Control of key maritime choke points, the Strait of Gibraltar, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malha has determined economic and military power for centuries. Yet despite its strategic importance, the ocean remains one of the least regulated spaces on Earth, governed by evolving traditions of international law rather than clear sovereignty. It is simultaneously everyone's and no one's, a global commons, that highlights both the possibilities and limitations of international cooperation. The concept of freedom of the seas, that maritime territory beyond national boundaries should remain open to peaceful use by all nations, represents one of humanity's most enduring legal traditions. First articulated by the Dutch jurist Hugo Grotius in 6009, this principle maintains that the ocean, unlike land, cannot be permanently possessed. Yet, this freedom has also enabled abuses from piracy to illegal fishing to waste dumping, creating what economists call the tragedy of the commons, where shared resources suffer from lack of effective governance. The tension between maritime freedom and regulation continues today in debates over territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, and conservation areas. All attempts to impose terrestrial concepts of boundary and ownership on an environment that inherently resists such categorization. Perhaps this resistance explains why the ocean has so often served as a space of exception in human societies, a place where normal rules are suspended or transformed. Pirate ships of the 17th and 18th centuries developed their own democratic governance systems that contrasted sharply with the hierarchical societies they originated from. Maritime law created unique legal traditions like salvage rights and the duty to assist vessels in distress, recognizing that the sea's dangers requires different ethical frameworks than those that governed life on land. Even today, cruise ships operate in legal grey areas, flying flags of convenience that allow them to navigate between different national jurisdictions and regulations. The ocean creates spaces where identity becomes fluid, where transformation becomes possible, where alternatives to terrestrial social arrangements can be imagined and sometimes enacted. This transformative quality appears repeatedly in human mythology and literature, where the sea journey often serves as a metaphor for personal change and self-discovery. From Odysseus to Captain Ahab, from Ancient Mariner to Pip Patel, fictional characters who venture onto the ocean return altered by their experiences, if they return at all. The sea voyage's spiritual journey appears across cultures and time periods, suggesting a universal recognition of the ocean's power to transform not just landscapes, but humans themselves. To go to sea is to risk not just physical danger, but identity itself. To open oneself to currents of change, both external and internal. These currents flow through human art as persistently as they circle the planet, making the ocean perhaps the most frequently represented natural environment and human creative expression. From ancient Polynesian wave patterns to Turner's tempestuous seascapes, from sea shanties to symphonies, from Melville's Moby Dick to Derek Walcott's Caribbean poetry, the ocean has inspired artistic responses that attempt to capture its power, beauty, and mystery. These works rarely claim to fully represent the sea's reality, but rather use it as a mirror for human concerns, our mortality and insignificance, our courage and ingenuity, our spiritual longings and existential fears. The ocean and art becomes not just a physical place, but a psychological landscape, a projection screen for human emotions and philosophical questions. Consider how the sea functions in dreams and nightmares, serving as a universal symbol across cultures for both liberation and danger. To dream of drowning is to confront mortality. To dream of floating is to experience transcendence. To dream of sea monsters is to face the shadows of the unconscious. Carl Jung identified water as a primary symbol of the unconscious itself, with the ocean representing its deepest and most powerful manifestation. In this psychological framework, the surface of the sea corresponds to the boundary between conscious and unconscious awareness, while the depths contain all that remains hidden from our waking minds, both treasures and terrors, both forgotten memories and unrealized potentials. This symbolic potency may explain why the ocean features so prominently in humanity's visions of both past and future. Origin myths worldwide often begin with primordial waters, from the biblical darkness upon the face of the deep to the Babylonian goddess Tiamat, a personification of salt water. Apocalyptic scenarios frequently involve the sea rising to reclaim the land, a mythic pattern now echoed in scientific projections of climate change impacts. The ocean represents both our beginning and our potential end, both the source of life and its greatest threat. It reminds us that what seems most solid and permanent, continents, civilizations, ways of life, is ultimately transient when viewed on geological timescales. These timescales are inscribed in the ocean's depths, where sediments accumulate layer by layer, creating a vertical calendar of Earth's history. Ocean cores reveal not just gradual changes, but catastrophic ones: asteroid impacts, massive volcanic eruptions, sudden climate shifts that transform planetary conditions within decades or even years. The ocean serves as Earth's memory, recording events that occurred long before humans existed and that will continue long after we're gone. It operates on a temporal scale that dwarfs human history, making our entire civilization just a brief moment in its ongoing story. Yet despite its ancient origins, the ocean is changing more rapidly now than at almost any point in its history due to human activities. Warming waters, acidification, deoxygenation, plastic pollution, overfishing, habitat destruction, each represents an unprecedented alteration to marine systems that evolved over millions of years. The rate of change is so rapid that many organisms cannot adapt quickly enough, creating cascading effects through food webs and ecosystems. We are conducting what amounts to a planetary-scale experiment with no control group and limited understanding of the potential outcomes. Some of these changes are already creating new ocean mysteries, phenomena that didn't exist before human intervention, but now challenge our understanding and management capabilities. Consider the massive toxic algal blooms that now appear with increasing frequency and intensity in coastal waters worldwide, creating what scientists call dead zones, where oxygen levels plummet and marine life either flees or dies. These blooms, fueled by agricultural runoff and warming waters, can appear almost overnight, transforming productive fishing grounds into biological deserts within days. Some produce toxins that accumulate in shellfish and finfish, creating health risks for human consumers far from the original bloom site. The complex interactions between pollution, climate change, and marine microbiology that drive these events remain imperfectly understood, making them difficult to predict or prevent. Similarly mysterious are the changing migration patterns of marine species, with creatures appearing in waters where they've never been recorded before. Tropical fish now appear regularly in temperate waters. Arctic species retreat northward as their habitat warms, and deep water organisms sometimes rise to shallower depths as oxygen levels change. These shifts create novel ecological communities with no historical precedent, assemblages of species that have never before interacted within the same habitat. The ocean is being reshuffled in ways that break down traditional ecological boundaries, creating what scientists call novel ecosystems whose dynamics and stability remain largely unknown. Even the physical structure of the ocean is changing in ways that create new mysteries. The Atlantic marginal overturning circulation, a massive system of currents that includes the Gulf Stream, has shown signs of slowing in recent decades. If this circulation were to collapse, in a low probability but high impact scenario, it would transform climate patterns across the northern hemisphere, potentially cooling Europe while warming the southern Atlantic. Such a change would alter not just temperature patterns, but precipitation, storm tracks, and marine productivity, with cascading effects through both natural and human systems. The ocean's great currents, once thought to be among Earth's most stable features, now reveal themselves to be vulnerable to human-induced changes. Their future behavior is increasingly difficult to predict with confidence. These uncertainties extend to the ocean's role in the global carbon cycle, where complex feedbacks could either accelerate or mitigate climate change. The sea currently absorbs approximately 30% of human carbon dioxide emissions, significantly slowing atmospheric warming. But this service comes at the cost of increasing acidity, as absorbed CO2 forms carbonic acid that threatens shell-forming organisms from tiny pteropods to massive coral reefs. If these organisms decline, the ocean's capacity to absorb carbon could decrease, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates warming. Alternatively, other processes might increase carbon sequestration, such as the growth of seaweeds or changes in microbial communities that could potentially enhance the biological carbon pump. The ocean's response to continued carbon loading represents one of the largest uncertainties in climate projections, a mystery with profound implications for human civilization. Yet amid these concerns, the ocean also offers potential solutions to some of humanity's most pressing challenges. Renewable energy from waves, tides, and offshore wind could help decarbonize the global economy. Sustainable aquaculture might provide protein with lower environmental impacts than land-based agriculture. Marine organisms have already yielded numerous pharmaceuticals, with potentially many more awaiting discovery. The ocean's genetic diversity, still largely unexplored, represents a vast library of biochemical innovations developed over billions of years of evolution. From cancer treatments to industrial enzymes, from biodegradable plastics to new food sources, the sea offers possibilities we've only begun to investigate. This tension between threat and opportunity, between damage and recovery, characterizes our current relationship with the ocean. We have altered marine systems faster than we can understand the consequences, yet we also possess unprecedented knowledge and technology for ocean exploration and potential restoration. We face a moment of both crisis and possibility where our actions in the coming decades will shape the sea's future, and by extension our own, for centuries or millennia to come. How we navigate this moment depends partly on how we conceptualize the ocean itself, whether we see it primarily as a resource to be exploited, a wilderness to be preserved, a victim to be saved, or a partner to be collaborated with. Each framework leads to different policies, priorities, and possibilities for human-ocean relationships. Each contains partial truths but fails to capture the full complexity of an entity that is simultaneously physical, biological, chemical, geological, and, in its influence on human culture and psychology, social and spiritual as well. Perhaps we need new ways of thinking about the ocean that recognize both its autonomy and our interdependence, both its otherness and our connection. Indigenous concepts like the Mary's Timo and Anua Kiwa, the Great Ocean of Kiwa, offer alternative frameworks that emphasize relationship rather than ownership, kinship rather than resource extraction. Emerging legal frameworks that grant personhood to natural entities, as New Zealand has done with the Wangui River, and as Ecuador has done with Pachamama, Mother Earth might provide models for reconceptualizing ocean governance. These approaches recognize that the sea is not just a thing, but a process, not just a place, but a participant in the planetary system that sustains all life. This recognition becomes increasingly important as human activities extend deeper into the ocean with fishing, mining, and energy development, moving into areas previously beyond our reach. The deep sea, long protected by its inaccessibility, now faces potential exploitation before we've even documented most of the life forms that exist there. International debates over seabed mining highlight the competing visions of the ocean's future as a new frontier for resource extraction, or as one of the last great wilderness areas deserving protection. These conversations reflect not just economic and environmental considerations, but fundamentally different conceptions of humanity's relationship with the non-human world. Similar questions arise as we consider the ocean's role in potential human expansion beyond Earth. The deep sea represents our closest analogue to extraterrestrial environments, with pressure, temperature, and chemical conditions that approximate what we might find on ocean moons like Europa or Enceladus. Technologies developed for deep-sea exploration directly inform the design of instruments for space missions, while organisms discovered in extreme marine environments provide models for understanding how life might evolve under alien conditions. Our ability to understand and interact with Earth's oceans may determine whether we can successfully recognize and study potential life forms in the subsurface oceans of outer solar system bodies. These connections between inner and outer space highlight the ocean's role as both boundary and bridge, a limit to terrestrial existence, but also a pathway to understanding environments beyond our planet. The sea represents simultaneously the edge of the known world and the beginning of new explorations, the place where familiar territory ends and mystery begins. It serves as both the border of the human realm and the doorway to what lies beyond, challenging us to expand our conception of what's possible, what's knowable, what's home. This dual nature, boundary and connection, barrier and bridge, characterizes not just the physical ocean, but its role in human consciousness. When we stand at the shore, we stand at the edge of one world and the beginning of another, at the interface between different states of matter, different conditions of existence. We occupy a liminal space, a threshold between elements, between ways of being. Perhaps this is why coastal areas have featured so prominently in human spiritual practices, from Viking ship burials to Shinto purification rituals, from Caribbean god ceremonies to Christian baptisms. The shoreline serves as a natural altar, a place where transformation seems not just possible, but inevitable, where one state of being gives way to another through immersion and emergence. As you continue drifting toward deeper sleep, imagine yourself at this threshold, this boundary between elements, between states of consciousness. The shore of sleep is like the shore of the ocean, a place where one way of being transitions gradually into another, where awareness shifts from focus to diffuse, from directed to receptive. Just as the intertidal zone is neither fully land nor fully sea, but a fluctuating region influenced by both, the heterogogic state between wakefulness and sleep is neither fully conscious nor fully unconscious, but a transitional consciousness with qualities of both. In this borderland, thoughts become more fluid, associations more surprising, boundaries more permeable, not unlike the states reported by deep-sea divers or sailors on long voyages. Perhaps this is why sleep is so often compared to the ocean, in poetry and mythology. Both represent states where the controlling ego loosens its grip and other forms of awareness emerge. In Greek mythology, Hypnos sleep was the brother of Thanatos death and the father of Morpheus dreams of all the children of Nyx nights residing in the underworld beyond the ocean at the edge of the world. The transition from wakefulness to sleep was imagined as a journey across water, a crossing from one realm to another, just as death was conceived as a final voyage across the river Styx. These ancient associations recognize something fundamental about consciousness, that it exists not as a binary state, but as a spectrum with the familiar waking self, representing just one configuration among many possibilities. As you move further along this spectrum, deeper into the waters of sleep, the ocean's mysteries continue within your dreaming mind. The depths you explore now are internal rather than external, but no less vast, no less filled with strange creatures and unexpected discoveries. Your dreaming consciousness navigates these inner seas without the limitations of physical reality, free to encounter both remembered experiences and entirely new creations. The boundary between memory and imagination blurs in dreams, just as the boundary between land and sea blurs at the shoreline, each flowing into the other without clear demarcation. In this fluid dreamscape, you might find yourself swimming with creatures that exist nowhere on Earth, conversing with beings neither fully human nor fully other, visiting landscapes that combine elements of different places you've known. You might experience the dissolution of identity that deep sea divers report, the oceanic feeling of connection to something larger than yourself, the sensation of boundaries between self and world becoming permeable or disappearing entirely. Dreams, like the deep ocean, operate according to their own logic, their own physics, their own sense of what's possible and what's not. They reveal aspects of reality and of yourself that remain submerged during waking hours, hidden beneath the surface of ordinary consciousness. As you sleep, as you dream, remember that the ocean's mysteries aren't separate from the mysteries of your own mind. The depths without reflect the depths within, each illuminating the other, each containing wonders and terrors in equal measure. The boundary between them is as fluid as the boundary between sea and shore, as permeable as the membrane between waking and dreaming. In exploring one, we explore the other, and perhaps discover that they are not two realms but one different manifestation of the same fundamental mystery. Rest now in that mystery, in the gentle rocking of mental waves, in the soft darkness of deep consciousness. The ocean will continue its eternal movements, its cycling of water and nutrients, its generation and dissolution of life forms, and you will continue your journey through the inner oceans of sleep and dream, floating on currents of thought and feeling, perhaps encountering creatures from the depths of your own mind. Both journeys are natural, both necessary, both part of the greater cycles that contain and transcend individual existence. The tide goes out, but it always returns. The wave breaks, but another follows. Consciousness recedes, but it will rise again with the dawn. Sleep well, dream deep, and know that the ocean's mysteries await your return. Both the waters that cover our planet and the waters of awareness that flow within you, connecting you to all that is, all that has been, and all that might yet be. Good night, fellow traveler, on the seas of consciousness. May your dreams be as vast and mysterious as the ocean itself, and may you wake refreshed, having touched something of the depths that lie beneath the surface of ordinary awareness. The ocean's story is our story, its depths are depths, its mysteries. We are never truly separate from the sea, never fully absent. From its ancient, ongoing narrative, we carry it within us. This memory of our origins, this echo of our beginning, salt in our blood, water in our cells, rhythms in our heartbeats that mirror the tides. We are the ocean dreaming itself human. And in sleep, perhaps we remember this truth that waking life obscures. Dream now of deep waters, of ancient currents, of mysteries without end. The ocean embraces you within and without, now and always. And should you wake in the night, remember that the ocean continues its rhythms regardless of whether human eyes witness them. Waves still break on distant shores, creatures still move through lightless depths. Currents still circle the planet in their slow, majestic dance. The sea exists independent of our observation, indifferent to our understanding, complete in itself. Yet it also exists within us, not just metaphorically, but literally. The salt water in our cells, the iron in our blood that once dissolved. In ancient seas, the calcium in our bones that passed through countless marine organisms before becoming part of human structure. We are made of the ocean, temporarily organized into human form, destined eventually to return to the elements from which we came. This knowledge need not be frightening, but can instead be deeply comforting, a recognition that we are not separate from the world, but integrally part of it, not aliens. In a strange environment, but expressions of the same processes that created and maintained all life on Earth. The boundaries that seem so solid in waking life, between self and other, between human and nature, between life and death, reveal themselves. In sleep and dream to be more permeable than we imagined. We flow into the world and it flows into us. A continuous exchange of matter and energy that never ceases from birth to death and beyond. The ocean teaches this lesson more directly than perhaps any other environment on our planet. Its vastness reminds us of our smallness without diminishing our significance. Its age contextualizes our brief lives within the greater story of Earth's evolution. Its cycles of creation and destruction, of giving and taking, mirror the patterns of existence that govern all living things. It is both the source from which we emerged and the destination to which we return, both cradle and grave, both beginning and end. Yet the ocean is also the great medium of transformation, where one state of being becomes another through processes of dissolution and recombination. Nothing placed in the sea remains unchanged, yet nothing is ever truly lost. Bodies become bone. Bone becomes sand. Sand becomes stone. Stone becomes dissolved minerals. Minerals become incorporated into new life forms. The cycle continues without beginning or end, a perpetual transformation that encompasses all existence. As you sleep, your body engages in its own processes of renewal and transformation, repairing cellular damage, consolidating memories, restoring energy reserves depleted by waking activity. Sleep is not a passive state, but an active one. Not an absence of consciousness, but a different form of it. Not a sensation of life processes, but their continuation and altered form. Like the ocean, sleep transforms without destroying, changes without losing, renews through apparent dissolution. The parallels between ocean and sleep extend to their healing properties, their ability to restore what has been damaged through exposure to their transformative environments. Just as the body heals more efficiently during sleep, marine environments show remarkable capacities for recovery when given sufficient time and protection from further harm. Coral reefs devastated by bleaching can regrow. Fish populations depleted by overfishing can rebound. Ecosystems disrupted by pollution can re-establish their complex webs of relationship. The ocean, like a sleeping mind, possesses regenerative capacities that operate according to their own time scales, their own inner wisdom. This regenerative potential offers hope in the face of the damage humans have inflicted on marine environments. The sea has endured asteroid impacts, massive volcanic eruptions, and global climate shifts throughout its long history. It has witnessed the rise and fall of countless species, the formation and dissolution of supercontinents, and the dramatic reorganizations of Earth's surface over billions of years. It possesses a resilience that transcends human timescales, an ability to absorb change and continue its essential processes despite altered conditions. This is not to minimize the real harm that human activities have caused, or to suggest that recovery is guaranteed regardless of our future actions. The ocean's resilience has limits, thresholds beyond which recovery becomes difficult or impossible, within timeframes meaningful to human society. Some changes once set in motion cannot be easily reversed. Species extinctions, for instance, or the melting of ice sheets that have existed for millions of years. The sea's ability to heal depends, partly, on our willingness to allow that healing to create the conditions under which recovery becomes possible. This relationship between human action and oceanic response, between damage and recovery, between exploitation and stewardship, will define much of humanity's future on this planet. The ocean represents our largest common resource, our primary regulator of climate, our greatest reservoir of biodiversity, and potentially our most important frontier for sustainable food production. How we manage this relationship will determine not just the health of marine ecosystems, but the viability of human civilization itself. The sea has always influenced human affairs, but never more directly than in the coming centuries. As climate change, sea level rise, ocean acidification, and resource depletion create new challenges and opportunities, coastal cities will adapt or retreat. As waters rise, food systems will evolve as traditional fisheries decline. While aquaculture expands, energy infrastructure will transform as offshore wind, wave, and tidal power grow in importance. Transportation networks will shift as Arctic's sea ice retreats, opening new shipping routes while closing others due to changing storm patterns. The ocean will reshape human geography, economy, and society, whether we acknowledge its influence or not. Yet, this reshaping need not be only a story of loss and constraint, but could also become one of innovation and reimagination. Throughout history, human communities have adapted to changing marine conditions, developing new technologies, cultural practices, and social arrangements in response to the opportunities and challenges presented by the sea. From the invention of sailing ships to the development of aquaculture, from the creation of surfboards to the design of tsunami warning systems, humans have repeatedly demonstrated creativity in our interactions with the ocean. This adaptive capacity represents perhaps our greatest resource as we face an uncertain marine future. This uncertainty about what the ocean will become, about how human-marine relationships will evolve, brings us back to the theme of mystery that is run throughout our exploration. The sea remains fundamentally mysterious despite centuries of scientific investigation. Its depths are still largely unexplored, its processes still imperfectly understood. This mystery is not merely a gap in knowledge to be filled, but an essential quality of the ocean itself, a reminder of the limits of human understanding and control. Perhaps the most profound ocean mystery is not what it contains, but what it evokes. The emotions, ideas, and experiences it generates in human consciousness. Why does the sight of breaking waves calm our nervous systems? Why does the ocean's vastness inspire both fear and awe? Why do we return again and again to the shore, drawn by something we can feel but never fully articulate? These questions have no simple scientific answers because they involve not just the physical reality of the ocean, but its meaning, its significance, and human experience. As you drift now in the deeper waters of sleep, held in darkness as if suspended in the abyssal depths, remember that mystery is not something to be conquered, but to be experienced, not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be embraced. The ocean's mysteries, like those of consciousness itself, may never be fully explained, and perhaps shouldn't be, lest explanation diminish the wonder that draws us back again and again to the threshold between known and unknown. Sleep now, dream deep, and allow the ocean's mysteries to flow through your unconscious mind, connecting you to the vast currents that circulate through all existence. Rest in the knowledge that you are part of something ancient and ongoing, a process that, began billions of years before your birth and will continue billions of years after your death. The ocean holds you now as it has always held you, as it will always hold you in the salt water of your cells, in the iron of your blood, in the calcium of your bones. You belong to the sea as the sea belongs to Earth. As Earth belongs to the cosmos, each nested within the other, each expressing the same fundamental processes in different forms. The wave returns to the ocean. The rain returns to the clouds. Consciousness returns to its source. Sleep well, dream deep, and remember you are never truly separate from the waters that gave you life. Never fully absent from the ocean's ancient, ongoing story. You carry within you this memory of your origins, this echo of your beginning. The ocean embraces you within and without, now and always. Good night, dream deep. And remember, the greatest mystery isn't what's out there in the ocean's darkness. It's why we keep looking. Why do we keep returning? Why we can never quite turn away from the blue horizon and the secrets it holds. That perhaps is the true siren song of the sea, not calling us to destruction, but to discovery. Not to death, but to a deeper understanding of life itself. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as vast and mysterious as the ocean that inspired them. But before you drift completely into slumber, let's explore a few more oceanic enigmas that continue to baffle scientists and fascinate the rest of us. The ocean keeps revealing new puzzles faster than we can solve the old ones. Each expedition into the deeper turns with more questions than answers, more mysteries than solutions. It's as if the sea deliberately maintains its enigmatic nature, allowing us glimpses of understanding while ensuring that complete knowledge remains forever beyond our reach. Consider the case of the VA incident, one of the most perplexing maritime mysteries of the nuclear age. In September 1979, an American satellite detected a double flash of light near the Prince Edward Islands in the southern Indian Ocean, a signature consistent with a nuclear explosion. No nation claimed responsibility. No radiation was officially detected, and to this day, the true nature of the VA incident remains classified and controversial. Was it an unauthorized nuclear test? Perhaps a collaboration between South Africa and Israel, as some have suggested? Was it a meteorite exploding in the atmosphere? Or was it something else entirely? Something connected to the unique properties of this remote region of the ocean? The depths keep this secret along with countless others. Then there's the enduring mystery of UVB-76, also known as the Buzzer, a shortwave radio station that has been broadcasting a monotonous buzz tone almost continuously since at least 1982. Occasionally, the buzzing is interrupted by Russian voices reading brief sequences of numbers and words. Its transmitter appears to be located in Russia, but some of its signals suggest connections to maritime operations. During certain broadcasts, distant sounds of waves can be heard behind the buzzing, leading some to speculate that the signal might be connected to underwater communication systems or submarine operations. Amateur radio operators who have tracked this signal for decades report strange patterns that correlate with oceanic events, including periods of increased activity during major storms or naval exercises. Beneath the waves themselves, the mysteries only deepen. In the 1990s, oceanographers discovered what they call internal waves, massive waves that move not on the ocean's surface, but within its depths between layers of water with different densities. These underwater waves can reach heights of 200 feet and stretch for tens of miles, yet remain completely invisible from the surface. They move slowly, taking days or weeks to travel across ocean basins. Their immense energy is hidden from direct observation. When these internal waves eventually break, usually against continental shelves or underwater mountain ranges, they generate mixing that's crucial for ocean circulation and marine ecosystems. Yet, we've only recently discovered their existence, and their full impact on ocean dynamics remains poorly understood. Even more recently, scientists have identified what they call underwater weather systems of currents, eddies, and temperature, gradients that behave remarkably like atmospheric weather patterns. There are underwater cyclones that spin for months, underwater rivers that flow along the seafloor for thousands of miles, underwater lakes of extra salty water that have their own shorelines and waves. This hidden weather affects everything, from nutrient distribution to the migration patterns of marine life. Yet most of it occurs beyond our ability to forecast or even detect without specialized equipment. It's an entire meteorological world happening beneath the waves, following its own patterns and cycles regardless of what occurs on the surface. Speaking of cycles, one of the ocean's most enduring mysteries involves its own memory, the way it preserves patterns from the past. Recent research has shown that the ocean retains memories of past conditions, and its temperature, salinity, and circulation patterns, sometimes for decades or even centuries. A drought that occurred 100 years ago might still be detectable in the subtle chemistry of deep ocean currents. A volcanic eruption from the 1800s might still be influencing temperature patterns in the abyssal plains. The ocean is not just a physical space, but a temporal one as well. A living archive that records Earth's history in its depths. This temporal aspect of the ocean becomes even more apparent when we consider what scientists call marine snow, the constant shower of organic particles that drift down from the sunlit surface to the ocean floor. This snow, made up of dead plankton, fecal matter, mucus, dust, and other materials, falls slowly, sometimes taking weeks to reach the bottom. By the time it arrives at the abyssal plain, the world above may have changed dramatically. The surface waters might have warmed or cooled, storms might have come and gone. Entire bloom and bust cycles of plankton populations might have played out. Yet, this material continues its patient descent, carrying information about surface conditions to the deep sea with a time delay that creates a sort of vertical time capsule within the water column. When oceanographers take core samples from the seafloor, they're not just sampling space but time as well. Each layer of sediment tells a story about what the ocean was like when that material settled, creating a vertical timeline that can stretch back millions of years. In this way, the ocean floor becomes a calendar. Each centimeter represents decades or centuries of Earth's history. By reading this calendar, scientists can reconstruct ancient climate patterns, track the rise and fall of marine species, and even identify cosmic events like meteorite impacts that left their traces in the sediment. But the ocean doesn't just preserve the past, it also holds clues to possible futures. In the Arctic and Antarctic, ice cores pulled from frozen seawater contain trapped air bubbles that provide our most direct samples of ancient atmospheres. These bubbles reveal how greenhouse gas concentrations have changed over hundreds of thousands of years, allowing scientists to understand the relationship between carbon dioxide levels and global temperature. It's the ocean, frozen in time, that gives us our clearest window into Earth's climatic past and, by extension, potential insight into its future. Yet for all this scientific progress, the ocean continues to surprise us with phenomena that seem to defy conventional explanation. Consider the case of dead water, a mysterious condition encountered by ships where they suddenly lose speed and maneuverability despite engines running at full power, first scientifically described by Fridtjof Nansen during his Arctic expedition. Of 1893 to 1896, dead water occurs when a layer of fresh water, often from melting ice, sits atop denser salt water. A ship moving through such stratified water creates internal waves at the boundary between the layers, waves that are invisible from the surface, but that drain energy from the vessel's motion. Sailors have reported feeling as if some invisible force had grabbed their ship's keel, holding it nearly stationary despite full sails or engines straining at maximum power. This phenomenon might explain some historical maritime mysteries, including accounts of ships becoming inexplicably stuck in certain waters despite favorable winds and currents. Ancient mariners who encountered dead water might have attributed it to sea monsters, underwater magnetic mountains, or divine intervention. Even today, with a scientific explanation available, the experience of hitting dead water remains unsettling. A reminder that forces we cannot see can still exert powerful effects on our most sophisticated vessels. Equally mysterious are the ocean's green flashes. Brief bursts of emerald light, sometimes visible, just as the sun sets below the horizon. While science explains these as atmospheric refractions, their unpredictability and ethereal beauty have made them the subject of maritime superstition for centuries. Some traditions hold that a sailor who sees the green flash will never again go astray in matters of the heart. Others warn that the green flash marks the moment when souls pass between this world and the next. A brief opening of the veil between life and death. Whatever their cause, these fleeting moments of otherworldly light represent yet another way the ocean seems to operate at the boundary between the explicable and the mysterious, the natural and the supernatural. This liminal quality of the sea, its existence at the edge between known and unknown, surfaces most clearly in the phenomenon of sea lungs or breathing seas. In certain coastal areas, particularly in the tropics, the ocean sometimes appears to inhale and exhale like a living creature with rhythmic pulses of water that surge and retreat independent of normal tidal patterns. These pulses can occur every few minutes, creating an effect disturbingly similar to respiration. Indigenous coastal peoples have long described the ocean as a living entity, partly because of this breathing-like behavior, which modern science attributes to complex interactions between trapped waves, coastal geography, and atmospheric pressure changes. Yet, even with this explanation, witnessing a seal lung in person remains an uncanny experience. The visceral sense that something vast and ancient is breathing beside you, following rhythms that long predate human existence. Perhaps even more unsettling are the dead zones that have begun appearing in oceans worldwide. Areas where oxygen levels have dropped so low that they can no longer support most marine life. These zones now total more than 400 worldwide and cover a combined area larger than the European Union. While many are caused by pollution and agricultural runoff, others appear and disappear unpredictably, suggesting complex ecological dynamics we don't fully understand. Fishermen who encounter these zones describe them in almost supernatural terms: waters that seem cursed, where nothing lives, and even the air above feels dead and heavy. Marine biologists have recorded unusual behavior in animals at the edges of these zones, with normally solitary species clustering together and predator-prey relationships temporarily suspended, as if the creatures recognize a greater threat than each other. The ocean's mysteries extend beyond its waters to the very ground beneath it. Recent mapping efforts have revealed vast networks of underwater canyons, some rivaling the Grand Canyon and scale, but completely hidden beneath the waves. These submarine canyons serve as conduits between shallow coastal waters and the deep ocean, channeling currents, sediments, and marine life in complex patterns. But they also contain anomalies, sections where the topography seems too regular, too geometric, to be entirely natural. Some researchers have suggested these might represent ancient riverbeds from times when sea levels were much lower, while others propose more controversial theories involving everything from prehistoric human settlements to geological processes we don't yet understand. One particularly strange feature was discovered in 2012 in the Sea of Galilee, a massive circular structure made of basalt boulders nearly 10,000 tons of stone arranged in what appears to be a deliberate pattern. Located 30 feet underwater, the structure would have been on dry land thousands of years ago when it was presumably built, but its purpose, its builders, and its exact age remain unknown. Another piece of humanity's past, swallowed by rising waters and preserved in the ocean's cold embrace. Similar structures have been found worldwide, from the submerged ruins of Pavlopetri off the coast of Greece, a complete Bronze Age city now underwater, to the mysterious stone circles off the coast of Japan at Yonauni. Each discovery forces us to reconsider what we know about ancient human capabilities and the geography of earlier Earth. Each raises the possibility that many of our ancestors' greatest achievements might lie not on land, but beneath the waves. Hidden from history by the ocean's rise and fall, this cycle of submergence and emergence plays out on geological timescales as well. During the last ice age, so much water was locked in continental ice sheets that sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than today. Vast areas that are now seafloor were once dry land, including the Bering Land Bridge that connected Asia to North America, the North Sea that linked Britain to continental Europe, and huge expanses of continental shelf worldwide. Human settlements, hunting grounds, migration routes, entire landscapes where our ancestors lived and died, now lie beneath the waves, mostly unexplored, their secrets preserved in the cold and darkness. Occasionally, these submerged landscapes yield their secrets. In 2018, divers off the coast of Mexico discovered the world's longest underwater cave system, connecting two previously known flooded caverns into a single network, stretching for 347 kilometers. Within this labyrinth, archaeologists found human remains dating back at least 9,000 years, along with extinct animal bones and evidence of ancient fire use. The caves have been dry during the last ice age, serving as shelters, ceremonial spaces, and perhaps even art galleries for early Americans. Now they're accessible only to trained cave divers with specialized equipment, their ancient chambers filled with crystalline water instead of air. What other lost chapters of human history might the ocean be guarding? How many civilizations rose and fell in areas now covered by hundreds of feet of seawater? The answers may lie in the growing field of marine archaeology, where researchers use advanced sonar, remote-operated vehicles, and AI-enhanced imaging to map and explore underwater sites. But the ocean makes such work challenging. Currents shift sediments, marine organisms colonize artifacts, and the sheer vastness of the seafloor means that many discoveries happen by accident rather than design. Even our most sophisticated technology struggles against the ocean's scale and hostility. The deepest human dive in history reached only about 7 meters down, leaving vast regions of the ocean floor completely inaccessible to direct human observation. Our most advanced autonomous underwater vehicles can operate for only days or weeks before needing to surface. Their batteries, sensors, and mechanical systems no match for the crushing pressures and corrosive environment of the deep. It's as if we're trying to explore a continent using only drones that can fly for a few minutes at a time, capturing glimpses and samples, but never able to fully immerse ourselves in the environment. This technological limitation means that much of our understanding of the deep ocean comes from remote sensing, using sound waves, electromagnetic signals, and satellite measurements to infer what might be happening below. It's like trying to understand a forest by flying over it, never walking among the trees or touching their bark. We create maps and models, make predictions and hypotheses, but direct confirmation remains elusive for much of what lies beneath. The waves. Perhaps this is why the ocean continues to surprise us with phenomena that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding. In 2018, for instance, oceanographers discovered an underwater lake within the ocean, a pool of super salty, ultra-dense water that sits in a depression on the seafloor, complete with its own shoreline and waves. This underwater lake even has currents and tides, creating a self-contained hydrological system that operates independently of the surrounding ocean. Organisms that swim into this lake often die from the extreme salinity, creating eerie shores, lined with the preserved bodies of fish and crustaceans. A macabre boundary between habitable and uninhabitable water. Similarly baffling are the cold seeps found in various ocean basins, areas where methane, hydrogen sulfide, and other chemicals leak from the seafloor, creating oases of life in otherwise barren regions. Unlike hydrothermal vents, which release superheated water rich in minerals, cold seeps operate at ambient temperature, but provide chemical energy that supports communities of specialized organisms. These communities can include tube worms up to 3 mm long that contain no mouth or digestive system, relying instead on symbiotic bacteria to convert methane into usable energy. Some of these tube worm colonies appear to be thousands of years old, making them among the longest-lived animals on Earth. Yet another way the ocean challenges our understanding of what's possible in biological systems. The deep sea's biological innovations extend to some truly bizarre reproductive strategies. Consider the anglerfish, where the tiny male permanently fuses to the female's body, eventually losing his eyes, fins, and most internal organs to become essentially a sperm-producing appendage. Or the female blanket octopus, which is 40,000 times heavier than the male and uses pieces of poisonous jellyfish tentacles as weapons. Or the Greenland shark, which can live for over 400 years and doesn't reach sexual maturity until around age 150. Each of these extraordinary adaptations evolved in response to the unique challenges of the deep ocean environment where energy is scarce, mates are rare, and conventional biological rules often don't apply. Even familiar creatures behave in unexpected ways in the ocean depths. Recent research has shown that deep-sea fish can see colors in near-total darkness. Despite the long-held scientific belief that color vision would be useless in an environment without sunlight, some species have evolved eyes with incredibly complex structures that can detect the faint, bioluminescent emissions of prey organisms, distinguishing between different colors of light that would be imperceptible to human vision.